3, 2, 1.
This is the beginning of the end for you.
To the sky!
Bestowed upon you the power of the sun.
A mighty sword!
Strike while the iron's hot.
For Camelot! For Avalon!
Let the heavens rain! I am Ragnarok!
Have a good Sunday morning and welcome to the SMITE Pro League Season 9 Phase 1 Seeding LAN, all powered by Prime Gaming. Now, for those of you out there, if you watched the video and you were thinking, man, a lot of these games look really interesting, how do I get a part of that? If you're not a Prime Gaming member already, then you're going to be able to open up access to the most powerful membership service in the world. Now, the things that you're going to be able to get, not only the free delivery and the music, movies, etc. that come with a Prime membership, but you're also going to get exclusive content. You're going to get free games, as mentioned in the video that you saw earlier. You're going to get a free, Mifflin, this one's going to be enticing to you, a free monthly Twitch sub. Woo! And of course, seasonal discounts, other surprise perks. If you are a Prime Gaming member, then use that stuff, man. If you're not using it, you're missing out on a lot of stuff. There's a little crown like up there on your screen. It's going to have a lot of things that you can claim. I was saying this yesterday, literally a game library larger and longer than what my life probably inevitably is going to be. And so as morbid as that maybe sounds,
Macabre.
it's just because there's so much out there that you can get. So get in on that. And thanks again to Prime Gaming for sponsoring this year of the SBL. And Mifflin is the one on the desk with me as we jump into a fun-filled day. 2 best-of-5s one more time, just like yesterday, but it's a third-fourth match between the Titans and the Warriors, and then the Dragons and the Bolts playing in the finals of this one, fighting for seeding for Masters, as well as seeding for Phase 2, and a lot that can be fun. I think, like, the difference between the two sets literally is going to be like the day that you play in Masters, so you avoid getting eliminated maybe a little bit faster, and you get one step closer to getting that nice 40K first place prize that Masters is going to have, or just any of the money that you can get if you place pretty well at Masters. Feels pretty good.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this
I
set
like
today.
money, personally.
Do you?
Yeah, I think that's an okay take.
Yeah, I
I
don't
like
know.
to have it.
It's kind of
The
strange.
people who say money doesn't buy happiness have too much money.
no, or not enough, and they're like, they need that to be true.
Oh yeah, like it's a personal philosophy to make sure that they can maintain. You're like, I'm happy otherwise. It doesn't matter. And, you know what? I was about to spiral. Instead, we can look at the schedule for what we have looked at and the way this is shaken out. The bracket. Again, yesterday, if you were watching, it was 7 total games. The Dragons end up winning the first set. They win 1, 3, and 4, and lose game number 2 there to the Titans. The Bolts, every single game, except for the last one, start off at a deficit and then win some ludicrous fight and take down the Warriors in game 1, and then in game 2. And then in game 3, they just did it, Mifflin.
Very quickly, too. That was a convincing set for the Olympus Bolts, who now have to line up against the top seed in the SBL currently. Historically, though, the Jade Dragons, Ghost Gaming, all the way back when they do win a phase, when they do dominate in the league, it's always at the beginning of the year, isn't it? So it just feels like, if history is any indicator, maybe the Jade Dragons are also coming out swinging today.
And a lot of history between those two teams. It's usually the Dragons beat the Bolts, but every time, like you said, it usually happens early in the year, and then when we get to Worlds, they both get eliminated, unfortunately. So we'll see whether or not they can change that one. Mifflin, looking at what these teams have to offer, And specifically, I guess, what we got out of them yesterday. The Warriors, again, kind of showing a lot of promise in the early games, a couple of falters against the Bolts in the late game. The Titans, on the other hand, they had a lot of promise, I think, in a lot of teams. It was bloodbaths for them a lot of the time. There were several games they started with a lot of kills super early on, and then it just kind of filtered out from there. I mean, the Dragons would play a late-game team fight just better.
Yeah, so I think that this set is going to come down to a lot of that early game potential. And I think when you evaluate the early game, you have to talk about the junglers, because both junglers on the Warriors and the Titans have had phenomenal performances in the last couple of days. I mean, Cubo Fred has been getting involved from minute one, playing these what are now considered unorthodox selections, but for my own heart, Robin, one of my favorite gods in the jungle, just so adaptable, so safe, allowed to play that aggressive styling without having to concern himself about dying because he's got an Aegis Beats built in his kit. I'm calling that overhead kick, just Aegis Beats. That also does damage, by the way. That ability is so good. And then you could also use that ultimate, which does upwards of 800 to 900 damage come late game if you're going for a full damage build, which will boost your survivability. Cubo Fred certainly has found a couple of gods that fits that style. And when you look at his other selections, like the Shiva, that's more early game pressure. Cubo Fred has made an active decision this year that he wants to get involved in the early. He wants to be the pace setter. He wants to dictate where the fights happen and when they happen. And so far, I'd argue he's done a very good job of doing so. But he's lining up against another guy who did the exact same thing in his set.
Yeah, it was also interesting because I feel like we've seen that over the last few weeks from both, yesterday it was from both Cubo and Lasbra, and yet there were several games where like we didn't see a fight break out until 16, 17 minutes. At one point, 9 people die, and it's just Nika who's left standing. It was fun to watch. I wonder what it was like to experience the set, and you know what? We can just ask directly how it was to experience that set, and we can talk to Cubo about this one. And I guess that is the big thing. There were a lot of moments yesterday where you guys maybe had a lead. It felt like things were going well, and then some team fights that maybe slipped through your hands. So what did you learn from yesterday's set that you're bringing into today?
I mean, honestly, the mistakes we made, I don't think we learned a lot from. Looking back at them yesterday, I knew these are mistakes that should not happen from our point of view. We have a 8.5k goal lead first game. We kind of throw up the ball, not on the same page, and then second game a little bit of the same. And that happens. Thankfully, it's a seeding tournament this time around, and we take it on the chin. We play hard today, and then we play hard in 3 weeks again.
I think that is exactly what either was a tweet or I heard you guys mentioning it in the break room, but there's that mentality of like, you know what, like at least we did that here, and we didn't do this at Masters just yet. So is that kind of the mentality? Like right now, you're still playing for keeps, but you're really looking towards the Masters tournament.
I mean, whether it's seeding or Masters, I play to win. Like, I would have loved to win yesterday, obviously. I'm grateful that it's just a seeding, but I can take it with a little bit of a smile compared to if it was Masters or even Worlds. So I think more than anything, it's just that we have to keep putting in the effort, and we have to keep going hard.
Well, if I remember correctly, it was like literally a week ago you 2-0'd the Titans.
Yeah.
And so, you guys are coming fresh off a set. Now it's a best of 5. What are your thoughts just on this set that's about to come up?
I think it's going to be exciting. I mean, I think we know how Titans like to play. Obviously, it's been some time now, so I'm looking forward for them to make some changes in their approach to the game, and I think we have done accordingly as well. So I'm just excited to get going.
Well, I'm excited to watch you. It sounds like you guys are geared in. So good luck in your games, man. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Always fun to talk to Cubo Fred. And the energy, I think that comes out. And that's something that we've talked about very recently. I think the Warriors get to thrive on the energy that Cubo brings to the booth. Like, watch their booth after a win and see
It's
who's
scary.
the first man standing up. And the energy is palpable. Like, you can feel it through the studio. And that is wild in what they're able to bring. But they are going to be matching up against, again, Mifflin, a team that they beat just a week ago in a 2-0, kind of surprising everybody in what you would call an upset. The Tartarus Titans are going to be on the other side. And you had mentioned it earlier, but you got to look at the junglers. Yesterday, Cubo versus Lasbra, a very fun matchup, I think, to watch. Layers here brings a slightly different style of play to the Titans. But yesterday, I don't think we got to see it come to full fruition.
I don't know. I'd argue Layers has a very good performance throughout the entirety of yesterday. It was a lot of early pressure. I mean, look at the clock right now. 1 minute, 30 seconds in. He's in the enemy speed buff. He's making double kills happen with his soul leader. This is Layers playing his style. When you lock in a god like Shiva, I don't think you can ask for more from your jungler. He really did every single time he's allowed to play this pick.
Yeah.
Get involved early, get a couple of kills for his team. It was more so the Tartarus Titans making a couple of key mistakes. Like I believe in game 1, Paul was struggling to secure some of these objectives with his E set. So even though the Tartarus Titans had established a pretty massive lead going into a lot of these neutral objectives, the Jade Dragons were at least able to keep their heads above water. I'm not putting any of that at the feet of Layers, man. He's had ups and downs, to be sure, a hot and cold player at times, but even in the losses yesterday, I think he plays exemplary. The only thing I think that you might question is what does he go to when his god pool is pressured? What is he going to when the enemies are targeting him in bans or picking away some of his favorites? And going towards the Camazots, that wasn't super impressive.
The Fenrir stands out, I think, both in Game 2 for the Titans, but then in Game 4 for the Dragons. Ended up being a phenomenal pick for them. And the first thing I thought of, by the way, when you said, like, mistakes, I can hear, like, Jade Dragons fans out there are like, yeah, their mistake was trying to think they could beat the Dragons,
Wow.
right? They're coming at them with vicious
you sound like just
energy.
the Jade Dragons.
Oh, yeah, actually, they do say that.
Yeah, you just channeled
like,
Panda
there
Cat.
was a point where I asked Mike, it was after the first game, right, where I was like, you're making me nervous about the Baron Samedi win rate. And he goes, yeah, no, we win those. Don't worry about it. And I was just
And
like,
then he
oh, okay.
lost
And
the
then he
next one.
lost to it,
Yeah.
so it did lose it did lose a lot of its power almost immediately. But it was still fun, I think, in essence. And you know what? I think the difference was it was a top 3 pick in game 2. It was a bottom 2 pick for him.
Definitely a counter pick.
And so definitely something that worked a lot better there in game number 1. I don't think we're going to be seeing that. Instead, we can look at what the Warriors are going to be bringing to this game up against the Titans. And it is going to be first pick for the Warriors. Now, this is where things get very interesting. We've seen the Zeus typically banned up against Paul as of late because he's nuts at it. But I also think the Warriors have a much more, I don't even know what to say, well-rounded style, I guess. I don't have a specific god when I look at the Warriors where I'm like, that one has to go away all the time. Like, everyone has something in their role, but it's not been, like, as prominent, I think, lately.
Yeah, I think maybe the most consistent through line for the Oni Warriors is Neoma going towards picks like Khepri. I mean, I believe in his, like, last 15 games, he's probably played like 7 Khepri games. I don't have the actual stats, and now that you're touching your keyboard...
Oh, I'm typing in picks.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were fact-checking me, and I'm sure the fans at home are, but I feel like the Oni Warriors really do succeed when they're allowed to play that style of pick, so potentially could look towards it here, though we have been seeing a lot of Yamoja emphasis from every single team so far this week, and generally when she's available in first pick, she gets picked up in first pick.
That's that weird balance, right? Like, so you banned the Bacchus and the Ymir.
Ooh.
I'm going to throw that out there. Is a surprise. I was going to mention the Artio being available, the emoji that you had mentioned available, a very easy and something we saw done by the Titans yesterday, at least in Game 3, where they scooped up those top 2, when the Dragons ended up making sure that Kleena got through for them. But Daji is the first pick. Now, Mifflin, Daji, it feels like falls into this weird middle ground where most of the time that we've gotten used to seeing her locked in is, oh, they've got like 2 or 3 gods that don't have CC immunity either in their ults or just in their kits in general. Let's go Daji. This is going to be sick. As a first pick, like it has been a good pickup for Cubo, but this puts a lot of pressure on.
It does put pressure. Anytime you take something in your first selection, the argument is, okay, the Tartarus Titans are probably equally valuing this pick, and we need to get it first, or we're not getting it at all. And also, first pick also has to just perform. You really need to be able to execute on it. But the conversation of, is Daji first pick material, or is she like one of the best counter picks in the game? I think both can be true. 2 things can be true at the same time. Daji just does a whole lot of burst damage, no matter what. Even if you do have CC immune ults, you're forcing them. You're still forcing a team fight resource. Or if you don't, you're forcing a relic. Regardless, Daji puts so much pressure on the defensive tools of whoever she lines up against that I think that she brings value regardless of composition. And now with a Morgan locked in with her, I think Daji is very quickly becoming one of the best Morgan transformations. Sure, you can go Ares plus Daji and you're burning beads and pulling people in, or just go double Daji and do the exact same thing while simultaneously dealing a whole lot of damage, while simultaneously getting access to Trickster Spirit, which is one of the stronger disengage and re-engage tools in the game. Also just has phenomenal objective burn potential with the bleeding auto attacks, very similar to OG Arachne.
And I was thinking about it up until yesterday. I was going to say that it was a 100% win rate here for the Warriors. Anytime they've played Daji, they've won the game. And that's still true because yesterday, the only time we saw it played was the Bolts, and they first picked it away from the Warriors and banned it the other 2 games. So it is something that has a lot of prominence behind it. And I guess it is getting its due diligence here. We'll see whether or not Cubo can keep up the amount of pressure that I'm now expecting from this pick. I've almost turned completely around. I was like, I don't know, why are you doing this? And then I look it up, and I'm like, oh, never mind, I understand. Keep doing that, or else we'll start second-guessing it. Rom Chernobog banned out here in the second phase by the Titans, and the Fenrir Osiris banned out by the Warriors on the other side. They locked in the Khepri and the Hachiman. That's their dual lane here on the Titans alongside the E-set they picked up earlier, which is something that I at this point, with the Khepri there, I'm expecting to end up going towards Paul. And we've seen a rise in a lot of these picks over the last few days. I think the Khepri has kind of been ever present. He's like always on the cusp of getting locked in over the last 8 months. But E-set and the Hachiman getting highly prioritized lately. Raven, if it's not Cubo, I'll be honest, I wouldn't have expected it.
Yeah,
he's like the only one who's played it for lately.
Well, here's the thing about layers. Back in the console days, when I was allowed to line up against this guy,
was it layers of death then? Layers of life?
It was chaotic purpose.
Chaotic purpose. Oh, even further, right? I forgot.
But Robin was one of his signature picks because he really does like getting aggressive in the early game. It performs similarly and has a similar power curve to some of Layers' best selections. Peak Kamazots, Erlong Shen back when he had the knock-up, Shiva currently. Robin has got similar ability to get involved, but the only difference is that his level 2 is slightly weaker. He doesn't have 20% attack speed stim plus double CC at level 2. Instead, it's more so just the ranged route and immediately into a slow. But the counter matchup between Daji and Robin is one that I know for a fact Layers is very familiar playing. And what is Daji going to do to Robin?
Yeah.
The only way.
At him.
Yeah, what do you do? You trickster spirit in. You try to do your auto cancel with your first ability.
Do you even know who you're
Who cares?
fighting?
Overhead kick. You try and ultimate him. Who cares? Overhead kick. Overhead kicks down. Okay, well now I guess you get ultimated. No, your ultimate on Robin also has CC immunity. So it is a very strong counter matchup there. Has great potential to lock down targets like the Morrigan. Has great potential to get into that backline and deal with Jingwei. You don't really need to concern yourself about survivability, which means that even if you are over-committing to the dive, you still have the safety net of Khepri, but generally you're not really going to be the recipient of that ultimate. So very excited to see how the Tartarus Titans address this composition. And similarly, top to bottom, it's just the new style of Tartarus Titans, which is, hey, we are going to get pressure in the early, and we're going to walk through objectives, and I'm going to drop my circle protection, and you have to fight in. You either get in there before I drop it, or you get in there after, because you are not out-confirming Paul, unless we get like a repeat of Game 1 of yesterday.
Well, Bologna, Jingwei, you had mentioned the Jingwei and potentially Raven being able to chase her down. Bologna gets locked in a matchup that is now going to be up against a Jormungandr, who, again, we've seen on the rise, picked up a little bit more often yesterday by the Titans. And Mifflin, I'm having flashbacks. There were moments where, like, you know what, Jormungandr was, like you said, early pressure, gave a lot to him. There was a game straight up where you were even looking up and you were like, yo, wait, when does Invader's Curse end? Because they were in the jungle and deep. And I think that's kind of what the Titans maybe are looking for. I mean, you had mentioned it, but getting early pressure, Raven feels like he facilitates that really well. Whereas I look at, towards the Emoja, while it might be helpful in lane and things like that, the Daji, feels like the Warriors are waiting a little bit longer. And we saw this very similarly. I can't remember if it was exactly the set up against the Titans or if it was one earlier in the week, but I remember them saying that they lost the early game and they lost it hard, but Cubo came in here for a post-game interview and he was like, yeah, but I know that we could win the late game fight. Is that going to be the same way that they play here?
Yeah, this is definitely a mid to late game slanted team from the Oni Warriors. They're going to struggle a whole lot to find neutral farm. The Morrigan, essentially against just about every single meta mage in mid, loses out on pressure. She's not going to be able to match what an E-set does as far as wave clear is concerned, which means that the majority of mid camps will likely favor the Tartarus Titans, even reflecting in the jungle. Daji, not as slow as she once was back in the boots meta, but still requires a couple of items before she's allowed to fight safely, whereas Raven, at level 3, is ready to get involved. So I'm expecting the Tartarus Titans to, again, just play as much pressure as they can throughout the early, transition themselves into neutral objectives, and try and force fights there. Whereas the Oni Warriors, if they do make it to late game, if it's 20 minutes in and the gold lead is less than 3,000 to 4,000, I think the raw power spike of the Oni Warriors when grouped up as 5, when they have their second relics available, should be able to make up for a pretty substantial gold deficit throughout the early. But onus is on the Tartarus Titans to establish that gold lead and to continue running with it, and they've certainly got the tools to do it.
Well, it's going to be exciting to watch. The Warriors, again, have been, up until yesterday, on a little bit of a tear, right? I mean, they've been winning a lot of their sets. I think the only teams they lost to, the Dragons and the Bolts earlier this phase. So a lot of surprises from them. I guess we'll see whether or not this one's going to remain to be one of them. They 2-0'd the Titans last week. Can they do it again here? Let's find out in Game 1.
Yeah, Game 1 here between the Titans and the Oni Warriors. It's J-Mac, it's Trelly here to kick this one off. SOT back on this Jormungandr. We saw it a lot yesterday, Trelly. Layers on a new look as far as SPL is concerned with this. Robin Cubo was the one piloting this, got up yesterday. And as we have Doug here as well for our spectator here in game number 1. Set number 1 in the second day of our seeding tournament here. Not a lot of mix-ups as far as the builds are concerned. Maybe the only one that really sticks out to me there is going to be Paul in this Eye of the Jungle start. But we have been seeing Paul kind of run this more consistently.
Yeah, whenever you're going one of these mages that wants to build a couple of tank stats, Eye of the Jungle, always going to be a solid start. And Paul likes it on this E set, likes it on the Zeus. As long as you're able to survive in these fights, you're able to get your damage off. So a pretty decent little itemization there. I like a lot the Robin pick into the Morgan from Layers here. There's a lot of different avenues to make the Morgan's life pretty annoying. It is a good transformation for Dardes to transform into Robin, but if you do get something like Crusher Erendite, Invis is vastly useless on the Morgan, then you can just chase her down, immune the stun with your overhead kick, and it's always going to be a solid die potential as long as Dardes isn't just pre-ulting and running away. Of course, you do have to worry about Cubo Fred. The Dodgy is always going to be a looming threat no matter what you're doing right now in the jungle, so we'll have to see how they do play that matchup. But I don't hate the matchup, at least in the jungle right now.
Well, Cubo doesn't have Trickster Spirit to get in, so he cannot close the gap on towards Paul. A lot of abilities fired between these two mid laners to get some pressure there. Dart is even eating a Spirit Ball, trying to go for a close range stun. And maybe that's the hardest part for Dardes here in this mid lane is him and Paul can both stun each other and both do a lot of quick burst damage. But Paul can do it from a lot further away than Dardes.
Oh yeah, E-Set is always going to out-pressure and outrange the Morgan until the Morgan gets that all-in potential. I'd say 2 items or so, or just transform into a jungler. Level 5, there's also a pretty massive power spike there, so we'll have to see when Dardes decides to get active, or just sort of sit back and play the farm game. We've seen Paul is not one to shy away from early aggression on this E-Set pick, like first blooding Pagon already, like a minute into the game, something like that. So if you step up too far, he has no problem trying to shut that down. You're going to have to watch where you step right now in the mid lane. It looks like Layers looming in the mid lane as well, just going to get those mid camps, but this is exactly where Dardes should be, right at that tower line, not too far up. All you have is beads to survive right now. The Invis is not going to help you that much. You're too slow. So trying to stay about that far back is the name of the game.
Can I just say it is criminal how many 2-man stuns Neilma has already hit in just this game alone on this Yamoja. He hit like 2 at the starting wave, and then he hit 1 as we panned back over to him just a moment ago. And Vote's been able to capitalize on him. He's been able to get those updrafts onto Cyclone Spin consistently when they do land up there. But it's unbelievable just how many of these Neil has been able to use. He used up pretty much all of his Omi wave 1 to get some pressure for him and Vote. Considering Jingwei is not really a god that's known for being able to get those early wave pressures.
Yeah, Jingwei usually just sits back, especially right now in the meta when Hachiman is so prevalent that you always have to be weary of the dash stun, and always the banner is going to give a fair amount of poke every time you clear the wave. So you don't really want to step up, but when your Yamoja is hitting consistent damage and CC, as you mentioned, you're going to have a good time. Layers here is trying to sneak up on Nika. Doesn't have the beads. Remember, teleport is available at the moment, so any sort of CC will stick. But Layers probably is trying to hit level 5 here.
And Nika wants to hit level 5 as well, but he probably won't be able to do so. It's a root by Layers, a knockup by SOT. And SOT will be the one to deal the final strike to put Nika in the dirt and put the Titans up for their first blood.
Every time I see this teleport start, I'm always like, does it end up being worth it? Because, of course, you fall down early, and it's nice to be able to teleport back so you don't miss that wave. But a simple beads probably gets Nika out of trouble there as well. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. Which one's going to be more worth it? Right now, though, gets back with just tier 2 Shoguns or possibly the Oni Hunter's Garb that we've seen some of these physical warriors start up against things like Yorm or any of these Guardians, really. But it looks like Cubo Fred sees the pressure on the right side of the map and is trying to get active on the left.
Aurora and Cyclone are pretty far back. They're going to need a lot here. Cubo does go in, uses the blink to initiate. We'll find the pull onto only Aurora. Yank him right back in. A stun out of Neil, and 1,000 cuts after. Nice and clean kill for the Oni Warriors to respond back to the Titans' earlier kill.
Yeah, that's just, you just know that you're going to hit that ult, obviously. Cubo didn't do the instant pull, didn't really care. He knows right now that the Khepri does not have level 5, so you can't cleanse that ult. No sort of beads. Aurora started with the shell, so just hit all 3 shots of the Paolo just for some extra damage. Wait for everyone to get close, then pull him in. That's a textbook gang from Cubo, but Neil does have the River's Rebuke now and is heading over towards mid lane, but is it going to get too active? Your Circle of Protection is available. Pretty easy peel tool for yourself, and we just saw the dodge ult go down, so no more aggression in this mid lane, at least for right now.
Yeah, Nika's already got to deal with the fact that there's a full Jade Emperor's Crown Jormungandr in his lane right now. But it's a pick that, with the Titans yesterday, we saw early success on this Jormungandr. When it came to these late game fights, this late game transition, the Jormungandr was just getting picked off consistently every time he was going in towards a Phoenix, every time that SOT was trying to initiate a fight. He'd lose over half his health, have to World Serpent for a couple hits, and then use the third one usually to get himself back out here. I mean, if you're the Titans right now, Trelly, you're looking towards this late game, which is where Mifflin had initially slotted it being Warriors being more advantageous of. You know, how does SOT kind of translate this early pressure towards that late game?
Well, it really just depends on the relic choice, right? No matter what, once you get to that late game portion of the game, when SOT is trying to be a tanky frontliner, you have teleport in one slot. Usually you want something, I think he had Aegis that time around last game where he was just getting extremely blown up, and against a Jingwei no less. So once you have that late game ADC that's just wailing away on you, you want to be able to go into that World Serpent as quickly as possible, but late game, you just get CC chain. This is why this teleport meta is really great for soul laners, but also in the later stages of the game, sometimes you just want blink and beads. You want to be able to initiate, but also not just get CC chained and destroyed. So Yorm is going to win this lane pretty hard now because of that first blood bounty, because of that Jade Emperor's Crown, but in the later stages of the game, you're going to have to watch out for Dardas and Vogue. They're going to have a lot of damage to this Yorm because they've got a few ways to proc the passive as well.
Yeah, Nika is not having the funnest time dealing with the Jormungandr. Much better wave clear for SOT. You see a fight, though, over the Oracle Harpy. Spirit Ball, plus a little bit of damage from layers. That'll be enough to secure the Oracles for the side of the Tartarus Titans. Can Aurora make it out of here? Neilmaw walks up, misses the stun, and that'll be the retreat call for the rest of the Warriors. Dardes going right back to the mid wave, but Layers going in towards the mid camp instead. Cubo up onto the Palau. The Layers should be fine. No, he does get yanked right back in. Not sure if he just decided to save that overhead kick and that ultimate there. Maybe not fearing risk of death.
Yeah, I think Cubo was definitely ulting for Peel there, so Layers said, you know what, I'll hold on to this. I don't have to ult to chase or anything like that. Once the ult comes out, getting the Palau for a blink, not going to be a terrible trade. Of course, Palau will be up a little bit earlier because of that Jotun's Wrath, but I think Robin has some ways to initiate even without the blink right now, so not going to be the biggest deal. I'm curious to see if we see any sort of action in the duo lane. I mean, we've seen so much where it's the Jingwei and the Hachi, where the Hachi should have pressure and should get aggressive, and the Jingwei just wants to sit back as much as possible. Vote sort of following suit with that, just saying, I'm going to get my buff, I'm going to clear the wave, I'm going to go back, that sort of thing. Cyclone, though, has to try to get active and try to farm out, because Jingwei late game, all of these extra crits are going to start proccing, going to really be annoying right now. Just has the extra assist under his belt, so Cyclone has no sort of lead right there, but a little bit behind in Dev Gauntlet stacks as well. That starts to stack up in the boxing matches.
Not too far behind, though. Vote is waiting around into the jungle, but not going to make a rotation in. Did have a little bit of pressure as far as the minions were concerned, but in all honesty, I don't really expect too much action in this duo lane between Jingwei and Hachiman. And it will be Shogun's Kasari on the side for Nika. We were wondering maybe if that was going to be the only hunters that we'd seen yesterday. I believe it was in the Osiris solo lane that we saw that one previously. Now, with his Bologna Soul and then going in towards the Tower Shield. So Berserker's still on the mind at the very least here for Nika, so he'll be able to get some of that early power and some of that early physical defense to try and deal with Layers here. But as we start moving through this game in here, as we kind of been seeing developments for the support specifically, I mean, the Gauntlet of Thieves, that's still a tried and true thing. Most supports are probably going to be building that, or one of those first two auras. We've been seeing a lot of this cloak start right after that first item.
Yeah, usually the Spirit Robe is just going to be such a potent item. It's very cheap as well. Being able to get those mitigations and the cooldown online, pretty solid. There's just a lot of the cloak tree you can make use out of right now, besides like Hide of the Urchin, which is just completely out of the meta. Every other item, there's kind of an argument to be made to be building it right now, except for Mantle of Discord. It's way too expensive. You don't want to be going for a 2,900 gold item at least right now. But Spirit Rope or Magi's Blessing, both you can get some good use out of. His Vote does dash in, but that's sort of what's going to happen in this lane. Someone gets aggressive, someone else not really interested in fighting, and they back up. Layers, though, is building into that Erendite, which is going to be extremely helpful once again for just removing Dardes from stealth, making his job as a late game sort of pseudo-assassin trying to go in and assassinate people from invis. It's going to completely shut that down. Once the Erendite proc goes in, everyone knows exactly where Dardes is, and then Layers gets that movement speed to try and chase him down. So once that item is finished, I expect to see Layers putting some attention towards the mid laner. Of course, as long as you have that transformation up, you have a lot of ways to just escape. But without your ult, could be in some trouble.
The mind of Paul is always interesting to kind of dig through here. Divine Ruin right away.
Right.
Maybe no surprise. There's Emoji there. You want to make sure to get rid of some of that healing. But in Stone of Binding, yesterday we saw a lot of Void Stone. We saw some Jade Emperor. We saw Celestial Legion Helm. I think Stone of Binding might be the new one that Paul has built here in that second slot, though.
Yeah, a little bit of CC is going to help you out. You guys get a little bit of extra penetration, but also some survivability. It's cheap, so you can sell it late game. It is sort of a power spike right now because, again, you just spend like a small amount of gold for a big buff, and then what are you going to do with it? And I think he also recognizes that Dardes and Cubo and Neil, it's a lot of mixed damage. It's not just straight magical or straight physical, and it's going to give you a little bit of both. So I think a smart option here. You also have two different ways to proc it if you are the E set. I think Paul just always wants that penetration and just a little bit of survivability. I think Paul, more so than any mid laner, wants to try and survive these fights. He always goes for these sort of hybrid builds, but Cubo got a little aggressive there and takes a lot of damage.
God, that Spirit Ball just chunked half of his health down. Paul is swinging early game up against Cubo Fred. Cubo just maybe wanted to go up, get a nice little poke and see what he could do, and then Paul hits him with a silent Spirit Ball combo there, a maxed out Spirit Ball. Slams Cubo for more health than he was expecting there. That'll force the Dodge E back to base. Tier 2 only on that Mace so far. Vote in danger, does have the beads available, but doesn't decide to use it at all. Instead, he just decides to die.
I understand why he didn't want to pre-ult the Abduct, because I think he knew that the chase would have ensued and Layers has a lot of immunity, but the beads into the airstrike certainly should have been the play. SOT makes the rotation over, and it's just Neil trying to deny this, and he has to back up. Gold Fury is going to go the way of the Tartarus Titans. Won't even need to drop the Circle of Protection. Oni Warriors, though, they answer back with the Pyromancer.
Yeah, so it'll be at least objective for objective. Not too much of a gold swing here. And talking about the gold, it's about 1,700 up for the Titans. The XP is a different story, though. That one is sitting dead even across the board. It's only about a couple hundred bouncing back and forth. And you can see where those levels have been made up. Mostly in the dual lane is where the Titans do have any kind of real XP lead. You know, only about a half level to a level up. But talking about the dual lane here, Cyclone versus Vote in their build pathing. We do see kin size right out the gate for Cyclone. And Vote's going to some very early career. Wind Demon, second item for him.
Yeah, Vote has been dashing in pretty consistently. I think he wants to get aggressive, but after just getting, I mean, pretty much three-man dove there under tower, maybe wants to dial back some of that aggression. Right now, still pretty far pushed up in this lane. Didn't use any sort of relic there, so still has the airstrike to get away, and both relics if he wants to try and survive. I can see why Vote wants to get those crits online early. Looks like a possible Silver Branch bow next. Usually when we see the chin size, we can expect that to be something like the Odysseus bow, but with the first item, Wind Demon, I have to imagine that Silver Branch getting some penetration online early and trying to help out with these late game team fights. I mean, look at SOT's build. Jade Emperor's Crown into Witchblade. That's pretty much a Jingwei's nightmare right now, so no sort of boxing onto the solo laner at the moment, just trying to stay away and do as much damage to the squishies.
Yeah, attack speed reduction, some physical prots to his name as well here for SOT. Doubling up on that Fizz prot with that Jade Emperor's Crown. And then going in towards a Druid Stone right after. It could be Void Stone, could be Stone of Binding. At least I think we saw that one come out of SOT at least once yesterday. So still plenty of options available to this Jormungandr for the remainder of the build. And I think that's where we'll take a look at if SOT is as the build goes on. Once he hit level 12, though, went back and bought a horrific emblem. So no beads, no Aegis going into these team fights. I mean, how do you feel about the horrific here for this Jormungandr?
I think I see the idea here. Obviously, you upgrade that horrific. Everyone does less damage, lower some movement speed and some attack speed, things of that nature, trying to survive. But late game is late game. And I think that the late game damage is still going to be coming out here as Aurora is getting aggressive on block the Abduct, but he has the Scarab's Blessing. I think they will be able to get his ult down here, but they're not going to want that trade.
No, but Layers instead wants to get smashed and does get the Pal out. That should be a pull in on Aurora. No, uses the Scarab's Blessing to cleanse himself from being pulled back in. Neil silenced. Neil hit with the Spirit Ball. And that should be the disengage now for the Oni Warriors. Good turnaround play by Layers to get an ultimate out of at least Cubo Fred, but it does end up costing Aurora his.
Yeah, the Scarab's blessing being down is going to be pretty massive. Only a little bit of CDR with that Spirit Throw as Neil is trying to invade this buff, but it looks like Dartes is an invis here. They're going to go for an engage. Overhead kick is good.
Oh, Layers loses half his health though right away as Cubo goes back in. Cubo still to the back line. Paul does find a Spirit Ball, and SOT has rotated to the fight. Dartes transforms into the dodgy and up onto his own pal Lau, but Paul's got beads. Paul has Aegis, but Paul might not even need to worry about using any of them, and he will not. The spit with the Spirit Ball, and Dartes has put himself way too far out of position. It's SOT to pick up the kill.
Yeah, that's the second rotation that SOT's made that's been pretty key. One got the gold for you. This one will be able to clean up that fight, and after another kill to your belt, you're able to finish that full Stone of Binding, so another power spike as well for the solo laner. Nika has pretty much sat in this lane and just tried to farm up, obviously falling pretty early. That death did hurt him a bit, but sort of sitting on his heels at the moment saying, I can't really make these rotations just yet. I want to make sure I get some items online. Right now, though, Frostbound Hammer, Berserker Shield, and Shoguns, that's pretty much the build. I mean, those are the key items of Bologna
that's
right
the
now.
Core.
Yeah, that's the core right now. Nika could go and get active, make these rotations, and try and pretty much 1v1 anyone, but just going to wait a little bit longer. Has a level lead now. Did not rotate out of that lane. Is level 16. I believe the highest on the map. Yeah, the highest on the map at the moment. So this would be the moment where he could come in and make some clutch rotations. Probably once this Oni Fury spawns in about a minute. I would imagine that's when he wants to get active.
Will be Stone of Binding for SOT. So two of those now on this team. Two different people who can proc up that passive. And two good gods who would be able to do so. I mean, slow between SOT and then Paul as well. And then the knock up and then a stun, respectively, between those two players here. So a lot of ways to start shredding out some of those early protections here up against the Warriors. And the Tartarus Titans, with about a 2,000 goldie, will continue their pressure. They'll take away the Scorpion right on the lower side of the Pyromancer pit. Aurora getting aggressive in the mid lane to put some pressure back on towards Dartes and Neil. Cubo rotating over, and even despite Cubo not finding much success in that last little team fight, even despite the fact that the Warriors haven't been able to find a ton of success across the board so far, Cubo is still maintaining a small experience lead over Layers right now.
Yeah, it is looking good. I like to see the pressure that all these pros put into getting these greater Scorpions, because I can assure you, in my ranked games, no one tries to get these Scorpions. They just take too long to kill by yourself. There's no sort of hold that thought, though. Cyclone Spin trying to find a solo kill on to vote. They're going to be trading some autos.
Ooh, but then a 400 crit will put an end to that one. Never want to try and fight into too much crit from the opposition. And maybe also not recognizing any potential rotation coming over. Cyclone will back up with his team, but that sets up for the Oni Fury, which the Oni Warriors have vision on. Circle of Protection is here. Can Paul secure it this time around? The answer is yes, but can they get out of the fight now? Cubo Fred into the backline is harassing one, but then the entirety of the Tartarus Titans just turn on the jungler, take him down. Jormungandr World Serpent to focus out Dartes as Paul takes out Neil Ma on the backline. Dartes just trying to run away from this snake, and he will do so. The Titans pick up the Fury, and they pick up two.
Yeah, great pull by them. They were able to confirm that one. 916 damage for Circle of Protection. That was the last hit. It's amazing that you're able to even get anything that can out-confirm that on the map right now, which there is none of. Right now, Pyromancer will be pulled. You have the 3-man advantage at the moment, but no one is going to be on this side of the map. It looks like Vote is still just trying to bully out Cyclone Spin on the left side and pick up the Pyromancer for themselves. A little bit of gold going their way. Now about 4 to almost 5K gold lead for the Tartarus Titans. The XP, as we mentioned, still not that crazy. We see some 1-level leads here and there. The ADCs are pretty much even, at least in the level department, but that gold is starting to add up. When you look at the builds, I assume Paul's got a fair bit in hand and is about to upgrade as well. He just bought a full Obsidian Shard in that previous pack. Now, who knows? He could get some cooldown, could go for a Soul Brew. That's just going to make this E-set hit even harder.
This comes back down to what Mifflin and Gore were talking about on the desk, where once we start hitting this 20, 25-minute mark, the Oni Warriors are within that 3 to 4K range, as they're still around that point there, 4,500, pretty close by here. There is still some fight back potential out of them. A lot of scaling favoritism, more so over towards the Oni Warriors, at least as Mifflin was putting it here. But at the same time, though, the Tartarus Titans, this new style of play they had, this more objective-centric style compared to what they were playing around last year, has had its ups and downs. It had its ups yesterday against the Dragons. It also had its downs yesterday. As long as these confirmations are coming through from Paul, they're able to get this extra gold, get this extra XP for the team. When it came to the late game team fights, that's where the Titans were really struggling in their set yesterday.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you're getting to that late game portion of the draft because right now the Oni Warriors are still, that's what they're looking for right now. They say, hey, we have a Jingwei, we have a Daji who's pretty much good in all stages of the game once you hit like level 5, and then we have the Morgan who really is able to just completely one-shot you in that later stage of the game. Just finished a full Spear of Desolation as well as the Divine Ruin. So double flat pen with some Doom Orb, the movement speed, and the raw damage. That's what you really want right now on the Morgan. 0-1 for Dardes, so hasn't been able to get too active, has been vastly useless in the fight so far, but I don't think that's going to be the biggest deal. We've already touched on the fact that this draft really does come online, I'd say in about 5 or 6 minutes in the later stages of the game if you can stay net even. Right now, though, they're not quite even. About 4,000 cold down.
Yeah, it's still fighting at a deficit here are the Warriors, and they probably will be for at least a little while until they can win a big team fight or sneak an objective away to start getting some of these towers here. But Rivers Rebuke out of Neil will catch a couple inside, but it's a circle of protection in response. Everybody on the Titans will be fine, even through, but it is a double Eagles rally, making a double Eagles rally. Coming out of Dardes and Nika, Palau comes through from Cubo, but doesn't find any value. Paul is the only one low on the side of the Titans, but it's Cubo going down with Layers jumping in with that Mystic Rush, and Neil Ma down at a quarter HP. The Oni Warriors, oh, everybody except for Nika at least, and we'll probably need to consider backing away. Nika full HP on the Bologna, now being ran at by the rest of the Titans.
Yeah, trying to full commit into a Scarab's Blessing is not going to be your best option. Even the Circle of Protection was pretty much enough to delay that push. Now, though, Tier 1 tower will go down. SOT is pretty weak and does have the World Serpent, so probably not fearing too much. It doesn't look like this is going to be an FG pull, J-Mag. I can't imagine they're feeling that confident. They did just win the fight, but it looks like Nika didn't get the message, and they're not going for this.
Nika does get plucked back in, trembled away, slowed down, needs some help from the team, and Neil Ma will find it with some heals and with some CC between him and Vote. That'll back the Titans away from trying to take down the Soul Laner, but, I mean, Trelly, that last fight, we just watched 2 Eagles rallies catch 2 to 3 people in each one, and there was just no damage follow-up from the Warriors. The Titans were full HP. Granted, they had a circle of protection to keep them there, but that went off before the Eagles' rallies even landed.
Yeah, but it's not the Tartarus Titans who are pulling this FG right now. It's the Oni Warriors. I think they recognize everyone backed up, and they're not going to stay on this long. Even with Vote finishing that Deathbringer, having a fair amount of damage on this objective, it'd be very risky and try and pull. This is essentially a throw-the-game style play if it doesn't go your way, and I think they'll recognize that pretty much immediately once they show face, and the Oni Warriors will have to back off there. I like the idea. They have a fair bit of damage. Dardes has ult, so there could have been a circle of protection on the side of the Oni Warriors if they wanted to try and burst that one down, but just wasn't doing it quick enough. I think they wanted to be sure to sneak that one as quick as possible. Didn't quite work out.
Yeah, we do see Aurora starting to invest in this anti-crit going up against Vote with 2 forms of crit, plus that second ability granting a little bit of an extra boost there. Aurora has invested into a Spectral Armor. It seems that SOT may be doing the same thing as he's picked up at least the Tier 2 in towards that same tree. So,
Layers might as well.
You know, Layers could be very well doing it too.
I think they are all recognizing that. Vote's probably going to be critting. I mean, he's got Wind Dip and he's got Deathbringer. He can't hide it anymore. Usually, you could go like, hey, I'm going to go Chin Size, I'm going to go Silver Branch Chins, and then maybe last item Ornate Arrow and Wind Demon. Now it's like a surprise crit. You can't build against it, but Vote's not trying to hide anything. He went right from Wind Demon into that Deathbringer and saying, this is the damage I want to do to you. Good luck trying to survive it. Right now, it's been going quite well. Vote has 0 kills, but we'll see as the game goes on, because that's when Jingwei is really going to start swinging.
We do see him kind of at the mid area of the player damage charts as well, but Tartarus Titan is pushing forward, does find at least some good damage on the Cubo. He does have the Trickster Spirit to get back to the safety of his team, but the Titans will pick up the Pyromancer. Can they secure it is the question here. Probably don't want to have to use Paul's ultimate for that one. They don't need it. Titans do confirm the Pyro. Nika gets rooted out. SOT into the backline. Finds 3 with the knockup. Vote has got to get out as quick as he can because he is low on HP. It's a Rivers Rebuke and now a Palau in response by Dardes. He'll find just Layers and he won't pull anybody else back in there. Quick beads out of Cyclone Spin. But now Cyclone is being bullied by Nika. The full HP Bologna. But Cyclone will make it out. A good res by Aurora. But all the Titans are falling low, using that circle of protection to stay alive. But Dardes goes down, not to the actual hit of the World Serpent,
but the ensuing residual damage after.
And Neil is probably going to get caught out here as well. Way too much CC, and they will be able to find two here. Cubo Fred is healing up, trying to stay healthy, but I can't imagine anyone is going to try to face tank this FG, but if they see the teleport, they're just going to set up for this.
Nika just went into 5, does have the dash, does have that extra movement speed from that teleport, and that might just be enough to have gotten him out of here. The one time, now that we've been seeing more of this heroic teleport, we've been seeing some more of these risky plays by solos. This time, Nika's able to make it out, but that's a relic burn for essentially free. Fire Giant now started up by the Titans. Cubo zoned out, and it doesn't seem that the Warriors are going to try and contest this any longer. Fire Giant, 24 minutes in, goes to the Titans.
Yeah, it was pretty close to being able to get that pal out, maybe trying to find a pick after the fact, take some Fire Giants off, but Cubo did not want to step up there, at least for right now. Just doesn't have the itemization or the levels to try and match that. Layers is level 20 to Cubo's level 18. Pretty much 3.5 items for this Daji, whereas Layers probably is about to finish his 5th and final item besides if he wants to upgrade or not. But it looks like the Oni Warriors will answer back and get a Gold Fury. That's going to be a solid little boost to what they have. They got some gold in hand now, trying to match some of the power spikes that we're seeing right now in the bottom right hand. 2 spectral armors were just built, the upgraded emblem of increasing peril as well. So a lot of power spikes for the Tartarus Titans. The FG is also going to be a pretty massive power spike, but take a look at these towers. There's 2 tier 1s and 3 tier 2s. That's a fair bit of gold that the Tartarus Titans can go claim right now once they start this siege.
Not just that, a Phantom Shell now finished up by Aurora, so we'll have that for the next River's Rebuke that Neil Moth throws out into the fight. Does have that upgraded Bracer still, as Aurora's been picking that one up consistently himself and has been making good use of it so far, typically throwing those ones not in the Fire Giant pit necessarily, but like right below or right above, depending on what side of the map they are. That way they can have an escape path in, or if they want to initiate with it, maybe to get some damage. But a siege to the left-hand side, the Titans will be able to take down that tier 2 tower pretty easily. Still a couple of towers left standing on the map. The Titans are grouped up as 5 around this left side Phoenix. Minions pushing up. The Titans are going to give up, at least this left side Phoenix.
Yeah, they still have a lot of gold they could claim on this map right now. I understand that they feel very powerful and they want to go for that Phoenix right now, but it doesn't seem like a play they have to make. Still 2 minutes left on this FG buff, so really don't have to force that one just yet. Probably, you know, push down mid, get the tier 2. If you get a pick, maybe then you go for a Phoenix. But right now, just being as annoying as possible, try and find some relics or some wasted ultimates before you go in. That's probably your best option. What? They will step into the tier 2 tower here as SOT takes a fair bit of poke, but that's sort of what Jormungandr does. Goes in, gets as much damage as possible, gets poked down. You can ult, you can leave, you can teleport back in. There's a few different options for this character.
SOT was sitting there taunting without actually taunting. He kept like quickly like left clicking to get like his breath, so he was just constantly like doing this soft meow with them the entire time in the jungle on this little cat Jormungandr skin here.
That's not a little cat. That's a big cat.
That is a very long cat there that he is running. Meanwhile, the rest of the Titans are running up the right side of the map. We'll take down tier 1. Tier 2 should be no problem for them at all. And still about 1:15 left on the Fire Giant buff for the Titans. SOT will keep the Warriors distracted on the left-hand side, but this is exactly what he needs. He's got 2 right where he wants them. In fact, he's almost got Cubo Fred dead to rights here. The spit just off the mark. SOT will go down into the depths. It'll give up the chase onto Cubo, at least for now. And instead, maybe look over towards Vote. Circle protection on the opposite side. Nika is dead before he has a chance to get in. Vote does manage to find a kill onto SOT, but he's distracted long enough for the right side Phoenix to go down. Neil gets jumped on by Layers and Cyclone. He'll fall down, and now it's only 3 left to the Warriors, but the Titans will not push any further.
I'm amazed that SOT found a way to die there. It looked like he was going to win that 1v2, still had the ult available, but I guess some lucky crits from Vote. Not even luck with how much crit he has built with that Ornate Arrow, but some crits from Vote were enough to put him in the dirt before that World Serpent gets off. Now right Phoenix is down. They're starting the siege onto mid, and not too many ultimates to try and defend this one. I think this one will go away pretty much for free.
Not a whole lot of damage in response either. Both the frontliners of the Warriors are gone, so really nobody wants to step up and try and body block damage coming from Cyclone, coming from Layers or Paul here. And the Titans, with their Fire Giant buff, take 4, 5 towers off the map and 2 Phoenixes. Talk about a high-value Fire Giant from them. That's going to boost them up nearly 12,000 gold in the lead. XP doesn't really matter anymore here because the only difference is really between Aurora and Neil in that department. You can see the reflection in the builds. I mean, it's full builds across the board for everybody, just about on the side of the Titans, minus Aurora here in that support role. And you look on the opposite end here, Nika still only has a tier 1 item in that final slot. Cubo and Dardas don't even have tier 1 items in theirs. Meanwhile, Paul is going back and finishing up his final item. There's a major item deficit here between these two teams.
Yeah, now you're in the opportunity where there's going to be Enhanced Fire Giant. There's 2 Phoenixes down, and the Tartarus Titans have pretty much all the control they want. I mean, they're able to pull this objective and then say, hey, we're going to sit here until someone leaves to clear fire minions. And once someone does, then you have the item advantage, and you have the man advantage in a 5v4, 5v3 even, if these minions push that far up. We'll have to see how they end up playing this. Just patience. Essentially, that's all they have to do right now. They could wait until Enhanced Fire Giant. About 60 seconds or so will be enough to make sure this Fire Giant buff is the last one they will need. It looks like they're still stepping up to this, though. Cubo is in the mid lane, so there won't be any mid lane fire minions to go, but this Fire Giant's getting shredded.
There's a couple of power potions and an elixir now popped here by Cyclone Spin, so a lot of extra power spikes up for the Titans. They started the FG, and they'll drop that one almost immediately right after. Paul finds a silence up against Nika. That will force the Bologna to dash away here. Pyro will go to the Titans, though obviously the Pyro is probably not the biggest concern for this team. If they can find a pick, maybe on Neil catching him out of the Riptide, but no follow-up. Instead, Cubo is just getting ran at by Layers, and now Cyclone up on the mounted archery. The shot will not confirm from Cyclone. So Cubo will be able to make it out of this team fight, but he's going to have to go back to base to reset.
That's 2 ults for 1, though, and Cubo did push up that mid wave, so that's a solid win for the Oni Warriors if he can get back in time to defend this. The Tartarus Titans still have not tried to pull this.
Oh
and
no,
is going
double
in.
Spirit Ball out of Paul is going to start this fight out and put Neil in the dirt right away. Vote has got to use the airstrike to get away, but how far can he run from the Jormungandr? It doesn't seem that SOT and the rest of the Titans want to continue the fight. Instead, they'll push their way now back over to this Enhanced Fire Giant, but Paul kicks off that fight massively with that Spirit Ball.
Yeah, he's just doing way too much damage. Enhanced Fire Giant did take over, so they did that dance for about 1 minute and 20 seconds. Paul finds a massive influx of damage, big CC engage, and that's pretty much all you need. Dardas did sneakily make his way to the back line, but he only found a snake. So Jormungandr was able to pretty much brush that damage off, and now it doesn't look like they want that left Phoenix, J-Mac. They're going for one thing, and it seems to be the Titans.
Spirit Ball is off the mark up against Vo, but the damage from Cyclone and the rest of the team are ringing true with a big crit and an Eagles rally, and Cyclone could go down here. It was a good pluck back. Cubo Fred up onto the top in a circle of protection down at Cyclone's feet to keep him alive and to keep him healthy. Look at all the healing. Look at all the shields that have come through to keep this man alive. They've done everything on the Titans to keep him up, but then they don't have anything for the fight after. It's already 2 down now as the Warriors continue their push in. Paul goes down. It's a massive kill out of Vote. It's only Layers and Aurora left to stay alive in this fight. Layers has got to find a pick here to try and keep something back, but he just can't. It's a double kill out of Vote, and Aurora is the last Titan standing.
Aurora can get this Phoenix. If Aurora gets that mid Phoenix, right Phoenix is about to go down, and if they don't stop him, of course, and now that they are going to stop him, how do they go for the end? I mean, you have to keep these 2 Phoenixes up, because if you don't end here, you're going to lose after the fact. It looks like they were able to save right, and now they were able to save mid, but Aurora is able to stall this one out for quite some time. I don't think the ult will come back in time, so Aurora finally will fall here, and now it's time for the Titans to get as much as they can. 16 seconds for SOT, 13 seconds for Cyclone Spin, but they don't have any minions. This is probably just going to be a tier 2 and back off.
Yeah, there's not much that the Warriors can grab from here. Maybe even grab the Fury on the way out. Nika is pushing up this wave in the right-hand side. So tier 1 and tier 2, and a fight back by the Warriors. And maybe most importantly, their Phoenixes have respawned and do not go down during that engagement. Probably the biggest boost there now for the Oni Warriors. With that turnaround kill, or turnaround deicide, I should say. Not turnaround, not single kill, a turnaround deicide, couple of towers, and now a Fury. The Oni Warriors have closed up what was a 12 and rising 1,000 gold disparity here, and have now shriveled it down to only 6K.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aurora played that pretty much perfectly, recognizing pretty much immediately, hey, my whole team's dead, and we literally lose the game if I don't stall. So, runs for those Phoenixes that were already going to fall if no one came to stop them. And then they weren't able to 5-man push right up the mid lane. They had to all spread out and disperse and push these Fire Maids. Once Aurora does fall, they've spent too much time. Not even losing a Phoenix there, that's a pretty massive deal. But if you're an Oni Warriors fan, they just completely shut down an Enhanced Fire Giant push, so that's also pretty massive. We've gotten to the point where Dardas has a full the Morgan build. Look at Vote's build, already just got full dominance in Venom, Deathbringer, Ornate Arrow, pretty much absolutely chunking everyone at the moment. So massive power spikes, and look what the Oni Warriors are doing. They are all just sitting, waiting, and the Tartarus Titans are like, guys, we're over here. We're on the complete opposite side of the map, so it seems like no one really knows where anyone is right now.
They're both trying to like find flanks on the enemy team, and they're just like on complete opposite ends of the map here. Oni Warriors should be able to at least get some of these camps that are coming back up. We'll finally see Dardes reveal himself on the left side of the map. But that could just be the call instead now for the Titans to go back and push this right lane up. You see all the Warriors have to make their back. It'll be Cubo, the last one, to find his way back into the base. Nika at the front line, and that whole fight just prior started with Cyclone Spin stepping a little too far forward, eating a lot of damage from Dardes, and that Eagles rally out of Nika to proc that second hit of the Dark Omen. We'll see if the Titans can take down this weakened Phoenix. No minions to their name. Spirit Ball out of Paul, or out of Paul there, will hit Neil Ma. The Titans not able to get a whole lot of damage back on this Phoenix just yet, playing very patiently, waiting for that next wave.
I don't know why they're doing this. Layers should be in mid lane. He wins the 1v1 versus Cubo. Split everyone up. The Daji is pretty much your best team fight ultimate right now if you're trying to defend. They're trying to go for a 5v5. If you split the Tartarus Titans and the Oni Warriors up, I feel like their fight's way better, but this Phoenix is weak, and that's got to be what they're going for here. And finally, they're going to start.
Eagles rally in the back, though, by Nika. That finds Cyclone Spin. Circle Protection drop by Paul. And the Pow Lao coming up here by Cubo. Can he pull anybody in? It'll just be a roar. Neil very low, has the River's Rebuke to get himself out. A lot of the Warriors are healthy, but a couple of them not so much. Neil being one of those that dive in by Layers, puts Nika down to half HP. And the Phoenix will finally fall in right. Layers at half, Nika at a quarter. Cubo goes back in, but Cubo may have just stepped a little too far forward. Not enough follow-up out of the Tartarus Titans to take him out just yet. But they get the Phoenix, and they're able to make their back away. But Nika may have something else to say about it. He'll go right back in on top of Paul, get that Scarab's Blessing, and the Spirit Ball will make sure that Paul stays out for now.
Yeah, so many low health bars here. The Tartarus Titans either have to escape very quickly or turn and fight. It seems right now someone's going to get left out to dry. The ultimate cooldowns are coming back up. Vote should be able to fly in as well, but with all the slows that SOT has, it looks like they might be out of here. Nope, Cyclone gets caught.
Eagles rallies back up by Nika after all of that. He manages to find a stun, but there was a silence and a Spirit Ball waiting for him on the tail end of that jump in. And so Nika will not be able to continue the push. Instead, it's the Oni Warriors threatening the Fire Giant. The Titans have already sent one back to base. They're secure. Their steal opportunity with Paul is gone. Cubo Fred up in the sky, wants Layers, but cannot find him. The Mystic Rush gets him out, and the Oni Warriors will find the Fire Giant. Cubo takes down a roar, and now it's SOT in the middle of 5, and he's going to go down. Dardes finds the kill up against SOT, and Trelly, the Warriors with one Phoenix defense, with one push back, have been able to claw their way back into this game.
I mean, we talked about how this comp comes online late game, and we are here in the late game. 36 minutes into this game, and the Oni Warriors are here. Only 3 left for the Tartarus Titans. They have to make a play here if they want to save it.
Phoenix is down, 3 towers up, so this Titan still has a lot of HP. Dardes will transform into Paul, drop the circle of protection from the east set. Paul is already gone. It's only Cyclone left, and he cannot stop this one. Vote finds the double, and the Oni Warriors flip this game on its head to take it away from the Tartarus Titans. It took them a while to do so, but it was an impressive turnaround here, Trelly.
I mean, it was just the complete stop of the enhanced Fire Giant. They come back and they say, hey, this Phoenix is really low. Maybe we can get this Phoenix down. They do get it, but for what? You lose pretty much everyone. The enhanced Fire Giant, once again, this time goes to the Oni Warriors. And I mean, you let Jingwei get late game. You let the Morgan get late game. Nika had the chase. It's so annoying on that solo lane Warrior just getting to the back line. Just perfect play by the Oni Warriors. Once they realized how their draft came online, they executed.
And I was sitting here wondering, man, why are the Warriors chasing out the Titans so hard after that one defense? They didn't get any kills during that one. So what was the big deal? It was that Fire Giant they were able to grab there and turn this one around. Oni Warriors start this set off hot with a Game 1 win. Can they keep it up in Game 2? We'll find out right after this.
If you watched the first 10 minutes of that game and missed the last 6, a lot changed in just a little bit of time. The Warriors up 1-0. And Mifflin, we had said that the Warriors were playing for late game. And it turns out they weren't playing for late game. They were playing for late game. Like they went beyond the late game and waited, get a really, really beautiful defense over there on a Phoenix. That ends up resetting the Titans entirely. And then they repel them slightly. And then unfortunately for them, for the Titans that is, that meant an enhanced fire giant, a really good fight, and the end of the game.
Yeah, I'd argue there was a couple of misplays from the Tartarus Titans as well. Of course, you have to give credit to the Oni Warriors for being able to withstand all that pressure for all of that time. Just constant aggression after netting themselves, the Tartarus Titans, that is, a couple of objectives, a couple of fire giants. But by the time the Oni Warriors were about 30 or so minutes in, they were on that Phoenix defense that you bring up briefly. Yeah. But
look at the
Phoenix
literal
defense,
time jump, by the way. Did you see that?
Yeah, 35 minutes now, by the way. This is post a couple fire giants. But the Tartarus Titans, and specifically I think Paul, was struggling with his ultimate placement in team fights, which makes sense. It's the only place you're going to struggle with circle protection because otherwise it's always going to be on the objective itself.
And that's standing still, right?
And standing still. But in some of these team fights, it's not even just the placement, but at times the decision-making, in particular, on the very last engagement, it was Cyclone Spin who was dropped low and dove deep by the Oni Warriors on defense. He gets the Scarab's Blessing, so you think to yourself, okay, well, Cyclone Spin's probably just fine. He's going to either walk out or he's going to die and get reset. But Paul drops Circle Protection on top of Cyclone Spin with Scarab's Blessing. Cyclone's now forced, because he can't die, wouldn't let him, please let me die, would not let him, force a lifesteal off minions, tries to survive, doesn't get a whole lot of healing because all the anti-heal already stacked up by the Oni Warriors, loses his life, and then from there, the Tartarus Titans crumble in their offense. And the Warriors, with just phenomenal chase, phenomenal objective-minded player, able to get themselves a fire giant and immediately a victory.
Yeah, those slash lines look pretty interesting. It was what, 11-4, 11-3, right before the Warriors start to turn things around. And then it ends up being, what, 12-11 in favor of the Warriors at the very end. So picking up a clean 8 kills without having to worry too much about anything else in the meantime, just a surge forward. And it was an impressive turnaround for them. I can't help but think, though, Mifflin, that if I'm the Warriors, I'd like not to bank on a right-side Phoenix defense going incredibly well for us, and it would maybe like to try and pull things in our favor or in their favor a little bit sooner. And so that's going to be, I think, the big question now for the Warriors going into Game 2 is whether or not they have that. Now I can see PBM Smite making sure to tag Dardes, telling him to play Hera, you coward. So officially called out.
No comma, though.
No comma. So does that detract from it, or how do you feel about this?
I feel like it should have a comma, first off.
Okay.
Secondly, yeah, play Hera, coward. But there was a comma.
Well, you have a comma and maybe an exclamation point?
No.
After
no.
coward? No,
No,
just
that's like
you coward.
It's like when you send a period in a text, like angry.
Oh.
Yeah. I hate when people do that.
I always feel weird because, like, there will be times, like, if I'm going to express multiple thoughts to you, you're getting one of two things. You're either getting 10
the multi-text,
texts,
yes.
Or you're getting one text where, like, I like, hey, what's up, blah, 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 blah.
If you put a period in a text, I'm like, what's up, dude? Like, what did I do, you know?
I just type a lot, man. And it's worse if I'm at home, like, if I'm typing from my computer, versus if I'm on my phone, right? Like if I'm sending a Twitter DM and I'm at home, that's going to be way too eloquently typed out for no good reason. If I'm on my phone, you're getting 20 different individual thought bubbles, and it is exactly my thought process, so it will be ADHD as hell.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see what the Warriors have to offer for us here in game number 2. A lot of energy after a win. And I think a lot of energy after a very big turnaround for them specifically. So they're feeling pretty good about themselves up 1-0. But with the Titans going down, it even was in the player cams there for a little bit. When you see that defense around the Phoenix, even they look a little surprised that things didn't go the way they had planned it to. And so we'll see if the Warriors can repeat that magic, but maybe a little bit faster if they want to try and secure themselves a more comfortable win. They will be second pick this time. So the Titans going over towards that first place slot, and this is where that conversation of picks and bans comes through. It was Zeus, Hell, and Shiva last time for the Warriors that were banned out in the top 3. Clean up Bacchus, Ymir. banned out by the Titans. Immediately, some respect thrown over towards Cubo Fred, as well as maybe the Morgan transformation. Daji gets banned away, and the Kalina is the response from the Warriors. But Mifflin, this one's almost out of left field, and Amos and Cobb has made his way up there as well.
Yeah, curious to see that one. Maybe the Oni Warriors decided to ban out the E-set just because, as you said, having to contend with a upwards of 10,000 gold lead at points, not exactly an ideal situation. But I think the Tartarus Titans' style of composition is good, but maybe the execution of it could use some improvement because you got to take into account they did have a massive lead. They had Enhanced Fire Giant. They had everything going into that right side Phoenix Siege. It wasn't just a misplay from Paul that makes it so difficult to siege into the Phoenix, but also who's initiating the fight for you?
Yeah.
Is it going to be Khepri abducting every single time? Can't do that 32 minutes in. You probably just die. Is it going to be Jormungandr with that pretty weak initiation? You're not world serpenting to start a fight. You're not tanking the Phoenix for your team. You can't just stealth in there because you're not stealthy inside of a Phoenix. Felt like to me the Tartarus Titans were struggling to figure out how they wanted to engage, which is why I believe Trelly brings up on the cast the Titans could just split the push. Like, why not go for a 4-1? Why not try and slow down the Oni Warriors? If you know the Onis are now at their strongest 30-some-odd minutes in the game with team fight presence, why not try to mitigate some of that by splitting up the entirety of the map? The Tartarus Titans seem to think that with E-set Circle Protection, with Enhanced Fire Giant on 5, they would have had a better opportunity, but still struggle to figure out how they want to start that fight. Morgan will round out the third ban for the Tartarus Titans, so two pieces, integral pieces, the Oni Warriors' previous draft have immediately been removed, which means that we are going to be looking at a completely different Oni Warriors draft.
A completely different draft for them. The Kalina's still off the board. Zeus taken off the board as well. Nyamoja got stripped away from this game. But there are still, well, outside of just the E-set, I was going to say the Shiva, the Hell, the Bacchus, the Ymir, 4 of the bans from last game that are still up and available. The E-set makes me think that we probably won't be seeing the Hell, though, Mifflin, just because of the way things have been going. You had actually mentioned as a potential ban here, and I kind of want to know, do you think that is it more worth letting it through and trying to contend with it? They did just win against it, although I don't know if you can qualify most of that game as a win, just the end results. Or would you have preferred like the Kalina, well, maybe not the Kalina, let's choose maybe a lesser of the 3 evils, the Nyamoja, to let through? I feel like the Warriors have 3 great bans, but is the E-set something that they should have been worried about?
I think that E-set is so single-minded in purpose. I want to get to Gold Fury. I want to get to Pyromancer. I want to play around these objectives. That if the Oni Warriors so choose, in drafting early pressure, they can limit E-set and keep her off of those objectives. And already with Shiva locked in for the Warriors, I think it's going to make it much more difficult for the Tartarus Titans to utilize E-set in these objectives. It's more so about where else can you establish your lead? Where do you find that opening thread? Where is it that one pick that you can get to set up for these objectives? Well, Fenrir is pretty good at finding that one pick. Ragnarok, of course, going to force out those beads very early on, as well as just having a whole lot of damage output, decent matchup into the Shiva, pretty decent matchup into the Khepri as well, who would have to dash towards the Fenrir to stop the Brutalize. So some potential here from the Tartarus Titans, but every single time E-set is in your draft and she is not going towards support or she isn't in the jungle, or even if she is in the jungle, as long as she's building damage, it dictates that your draft is now an objective composition. That is now the main strength of your draft because she falls off in these late game team fights. It is very, very difficult to utilize Circle Protection for anything outside of just damage and damage mitigation. You don't get the heal in the late game, which means that you're losing out on 33% at minimum of that ultimate.
Yeah, something you need to be worried about. Good news for the Warriors, maybe bad news for the Titans. So yesterday when the Titans won against the Dragons in Game 2, their draft had an E-set, had a Fenrir, had a Hachiman. But unfortunately for them, the other 2 that it had were the Nyamoja and the Jormungandr, and the Warriors have taken care of those 2 one way or another. Well, actually, just one way. They were both banned, as it turns out.
That's really smart.
And the Osiris, and so you really like that one.
Yeah, Osiris ban, I think, just is exactly what the Tartarus Titans need. Jormungandr was struggling to create space in the last team fight. That is all Osiris does. We've had the opportunity to interview SOT in the past when he was playing for the Solar Scarabs, and he said, when I lock in Osiris, watch me play. He walks straight into the back line, he tethers at least 2 people, and he simply W keys at him. He's not autoing. He's barely throwing out his abilities. He is just creating a whole lot of space because Osiris is nearly unkillable thanks to the damage mitigation of Tether and his passive, plus just going a Soul Lane style of build. So in a composition that was lacking a zoner, lacking a piece that could create that space, the Oni Warriors say, all right, well, let's make sure that they can't at least have one of SOT's best.
I'll try to stifle him a little bit. It's not a Hera.
Humiliate them.
So Mike, if you're watching and you want to call him out one more time, I guess it's still there. But Discordia, I feel like
might be braver.
Can be braver, right? Like, it's something that doesn't have the shield, doesn't have a whole like bodyguard built into the kit. So Discordia is the lock-in for the Warriors. And again, Mifflin, I think if it was anybody that's not Dardes, you start to have a conversation of like, oh my God, where is this coming from? How do you think this is going to work? But at the same time, the Warriors have played this a ton. On the other side, you've got presumably Nox support just now locked in.
Yeah, when's the last time we saw Aurora play Nox support? This is not a pick that I associate with this player, but it fits the composition
done it this year?
relatively well. The lockdown potential is there, but the follow-up isn't quite. I suppose Shadow Lock plus Circle Protection is a pretty decent combo in that it's constantly applying damage, which will be constantly stacking up the charge of Circle Protection while holding them in place, which is one of the things that you brought up a little bit earlier. Easier to hit objectives because they stand still. Everybody's standing still if Nox is locked onto them. But this is an incredibly, and I cannot emphasize this enough, an incredibly high execution composition from the Tartarus Titans. You are demanding excellence and perfection in every single team fight if you want to perform on this, because Nox already being so single target, already lacking the Guardian stats, is going to be pretty hard to play. ESET in the team fight, very, very difficult as she is largely immobile, and then Fenrir falls off a little bit come late game. So I am curious about the Tartarus Titans' ability to team fight yet again, which seems to be a weakness of their compositions recently. Whereas the Oni Warriors, their draft makes a whole lot of sense to me. Discordia, sure, a little bit unorthodox in mid, but should be able to hold her own or at least play safely. And then you got to wonder, what's the main strength of Discordia? In my mind, and maybe it's my bias having played jungle for so long, it's the passive. You're giving somebody additional power. And more often than not, it goes over to the soul lane, especially for the Oni Warriors, how Nika likes to play. But we could see Nika decide actively to step off a little bit and allow this Shiva to pick up the Discordia passive, and all of a sudden, one of the strongest early game gods in the game just got a little bit stronger. That's pretty scary.
Well, we're in for a treat. I double-checked to make sure. This is the first time Aurora's played Nox, so it's going to be a debut for us here. The Titans and the Warriors. Let's see if they can pull it back.
First time seeing Nox coming out of the support here for the Titans. Maybe no surprise, though, because Nox has never really been so much of a meta pick as it is now here in the SPL in Season 9. It's J-Mac and Trelly here for game number 2 between the Titans and the Warriors. And, man, Trelly, game number 1 was going smooth sailing for the Titans for like 25-plus minutes. And the Warriors have one good Phoenix defense. I can't even call it a Phoenix defense technically because they lost the Phoenixes prior to that one. They were just able to repel back the Titans over anything else and then do it again afterwards, take a fire giant in that game there. So the Warriors went for late game last time. Do you think they've got the late game this time with this composition, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the Tartarus Titans drafted for early game is what it seems like. I mean, with anytime I see Fenrir, I mean, that's got to be the option. And Miff already touched on the desk, but Aurora has to be playing on point with these Shadow Locks to really get the use, because if not, you don't have much CC on this comp. It's pretty much just the Ragnarok. Paul has to fend for himself, and you got to make sure Aurora's on point. But one of the best support players in the league. I'm sure he will be just fine. Another interesting pick, as we touched on, is this Kakolin. I mean, I imagine Nika is going to have the Discordia passive pretty much all game. You're always wanting to get active and fight on this pick. But against Bologna, SOT is not going to want to stray away from those boxing matches either. We'll have to see how that soul lane ends up going. And if you can really make use of the Discordia passive, whoever ends up getting it.
It's going to be level 3 before Aurora can get any kind of combo out there. He picked up the dash level 1. Nika gets 2v1'd at the totem for Layers to bring up first blood. On the side of the Tartarus Titans, Cubo Fred jumped on, a stun by Layers, but a pull in with that sweep by Cubo should stop the fight there. Nika is back and has that tier 1 mail to his name. And now Cyclone losing out on the beads from the pluck by Neil. And then the updraft right after by Vote. A lot of pressure put in this dual lane. And Layers is again diving into the jungle up against Cubo. The sweep not going to stop the brutalize. The dash will get Cubo far enough away.
Wow, just the little minis on those back camps were enough to tick him over to level 3 so that he could dash away. Probably would have had to juke another jump because the cooldown of the jump resets, and SMT is hitting tower at 1 minute and 45 seconds. I mean, not very hard at all, but just that shows a level of aggression that you can't really match getting any sort of tower shots, because anytime those minions die, you're going to take like a solid 20% of your HP by a tower shot right now. So the amount of aggression we're seeing out of the Bologna is what you would expect to see against like a Colin this time around with a Bluestone and a Mystical. Roar gonna take a little bit of poke damage here and will answer back with a combo of his own, but not gonna return that damage. Nox right now not gonna be doing too much. Vote though
goes back in, needs 2 more autos, needs 1 more auto.
didn't
Will
miss!
find it. Vote does not miss these shots over here in the duo lane, and even Aurora had gotten low during all of that. So the Oni Warriors, just like last game where there's a first blood in solo lane, it's an answer back in the duo.
Vote did not miss a single auto attack. I mean, I would have missed like 3 of them and been like happy with, I would have been happy with some poke. Vote wanted that kill and dashed in knowing he was going to get that kill. So the Tartarus Titans not off to a great start. They got that first blood, but Vote, we saw what he was able to do last game in the late stage of the game. With a first blood in lane, he's just going to get there even quicker. So already I'm imagining that the Tartarus Titans, they're on a timer right now. Can you shut down Vote before he builds his 3 crit items, even in a triple spectral armor, and still hard carries? We'll have to see.
Yeah, that's the thing, is he did all that damage still into triple spectral armor at the end of all of that one. So Vote really ringing in with this triple crit and even this triple percent pen that he went there between that dominance, between the Silver Branch and then the Wind Demon kind of doubling into both of those little branches there. He's able to find an immense amount of pressure in those late game team fights here. But Vote and Neil, level 4 as they clear out this purple buff camp. Actually, both of them taking over to level 5 to drop that one to go into lane. And Aurora, yeah, it's something that I mentioned just because, you know, typically first wave, that's always where you want to see what ability they have. Aurora went with that dash level 1. So it was kind of an indication here for the Titans that they weren't ready to fight until at least level 3 in that dual lane. That's where the pressure was instead. Elsewhere on the map, Cubo Fred picked up. And that's a dead Shiva. No beads means no escape.
I mean, there's 3 other forms of CC, or 2 other forms of CC immunity in the kit, just not quick enough to get the ult off. Obviously, the dash wasn't up either, so unfortunate Cubo gets pulled on a tower. That's an easy second kill for Layers now, but it looks like there is a little bit of a brawl going on in the solo lane. No more ultimate for SOT. Will just back up. Has the teleport. Has not backed since the start of the game. That's 4 minutes in lane SOT has been sitting. So that's going to be a full Berserker shield. And I can imagine Nika was winning that just a little bit until this item will be completed. And now probably not wanting to box the Bologna anymore.
No, it does have Bluestone, though, to try and match up some of that clear pressure. And able to at least keep himself in that lane. Does have a small XP lead, even despite the fact that he went down. First blood on that side of the map, so very impressive by Nika to be able to hold that level of farm up, even up against SOT and Layers and all the pressure that they've put out here. I'm curious as to what Nika's going to get first with this item. This Steel Mail, I mean, there's a lot of options you can go to. We've seen Sovereignty solo lane come back here. You think maybe we see something similar here for Nika?
I think it's got to be Mystical. Only really King Arthur goes to Sovereignty, and you do get the double Mystical procs with Kakolin's second ability, but I assume the HP 5 is going to be useful, and that is going to be the Sovereignty ticking away, so I think Nika just recognizes, number 1, I don't have any sustain in this lane. I don't have Death's Toll. I don't have a cleave auto attack. I need a way to survive, and it's a physical jungle and a physical solo laner. I'm going to be up against double physicals, so whenever Cubo Fred rotates over, we both get a little bit of extra physical protections, and our team fights a little bit better.
We do see double Divine Ruin here amongst the mid lane. We haven't even got to really talk about this Dardes and Paul matchup just because everything's been happening around them. I don't even think that Cubo and Layers have come through the mid lane except to attack each other. I mean, we did see Layers get that pickup kill on Cubo under the tier 1 tower, but that's really all that we've seen of these junglers when it comes to these mid lane skirmishes here. And as we start scaling up, the desk is highlighting maybe some of the downsides of that Circle Protection late game. You're not going to be getting as much of that healing benefit, especially with Divine Ruin being picked up there by Dardes. That Golden Apple, man, that thing can rip through the backline, deal some big damage.
Yeah, it really just depends on how Dardes decides to use this ultimate, but Circle of Protection, while it is a good survivability tool and a good confirm tool, it also just does a lot of damage, and one thing that the Tartarus Titans have is Lockdown. You've got Ragnarok, you've got Aurora's combo. If you're sitting in the full Circle of Protection, even tanks are getting pretty much one shot. No one wants to sit in the fully charged Circle of Protection, so as long as Paul is using that effectively, should not be that big of an issue. Also, finish the Divine Ruin for himself, and going into either that Stone of Binding we saw last game or another Void Stone. Not too much magical damage to worry about. It's really just Dardes and then Neoma on the Khepri, so I imagine Stone of Binding will come through, but a little bit of protection isn't going to be bad either. Paul goes for the Aegis this time. No sort of beads, not fearing the lockdown, more so just the damage.
Well, we do see potential 2v2 up here on the top side of the map, but it's going to be dissuaded immediately as soon as Neil shows up. Stun
will lock Neil in place there. So no continued aggression up against Layers or against SOT. Instead, they'll just go back and get their respective farm inside their jungle. Layers speed buff is back up, so I imagine he'll want to go over there and grab that. At least being able to help out SOT with grabbing his farm here. It is starting up crit once again for Vote, as he already does have that 8-pointed shuriken built up. So I'm curious if Cyclone will also go down that crit route, or do you think he'll maybe go around that same attack speed pen tree that he went last time?
I mean, Cyclone just saw how much Vote was able to do with that crit, but also Cyclone was doing a fair bit of damage in his own right. There's a fair bit of defense already built, and it looks like Shin Size is going to be the option here. Not wanting to fight Vote with a level lead, I think makes a lot of sense. Not wanting to say, hey, I'm going to go to crit and try and box the Jingwei from behind. I think Cyclone's going the better route here, just saying, I'm going to try and shred everyone else and just sort of avoid Vote. But something to note here, J-Mac, there's been 3 chalices purchased for the Oni Warriors. Right now, I like to think of that as an investment. That's essentially 1,000 gold, give or take, that you're putting into potions. The later the game goes on, the Titans are going to buy potions here and there, and eventually you'll get your money's worth. But right now, the Oni Warriors are essentially even more gold down before than they already were because of those chalices.
Yeah, that is going to be putting them a little bit behind. I didn't even notice the fact that even Tartarus had picked one up there. Seeing it in solo lane, usually no surprise into that regard there. Seeing it in jungle and in mid, probably definitely the bigger shocker when it comes down to that one. But because no level 12 yet, Cubo's still susceptible to being picked up like something by the Ragnarok here, or being locked down by one of Aurora's combos, because he does only have Blink for that first relic. So we'll have to wait for Cubo to hit level 12 to pick up that second relic. Make himself even more safe than a Shiva already. It's weird to kind of say. It's almost kind of like that Serket mentality, like, dang, Serket's got a lot of mobility. You throw a Blink in there, now she's even more mobile. Same kind of regards here to Shiva.
I mean, it's just wild that this is the most inactive I think we've ever seen a Shiva in the early game. It looks like SOT is proxying and he's going in.
Cubo does get one heal off though, and that's enough to keep him alive. Now it's a turnaround by Nika with the Kakula. Dashing in gets picked up by the Ragnarok. But I don't know if you wanted to pick up Nika during that one. Layers still running through, but a Blink out of the Fenrir gets him out. Meanwhile, Aurora being accosted on the opposite side, and SOT pulled back in by the sweep out of Cubo. A dash in one, but Nika is slowly ticking away that health bar with that Vent Anger, and that will take down SOT for a second kill for the Warriors.
That was a really solid answer back, but Nika is not going to give up on this chase just yet. Layers will finally go back just for the speed buff here, but I really thought picking up with the Ragnarok was going to be his downfall, but he was able to throw him away, avoid the tick, and blink out. So that was a really sick play to make sure you keep your 2-0 bounty to yourself. You don't want to be giving anyone any gold right now, so Layers survives that one. But a solid answer back for the Oni Warriors. Now you get a kill onto your solo laner, who already was getting pretty aggressive in this lane. Still a little bit behind, about 1,000 gold, but at least you get a little bit of extra pressure. Paul, though, he's going to the Gold Fury.
Gold Fury for him and Aurora to start this up. They're taking it a little bit slowly. Boats on the way. Some steal potential from a Jingwei, but not going to be enough. That circle of protection will guarantee the objective for the Titans. Meanwhile, the Warriors in response will at least go towards the Pyromancer so they don't lose out on too much of their gold disparity. SOT trying to make his way over here to try and stop this one down, but Nika is constantly harassing him, and that is actually just enough to scare the Warriors off the Pyromancer, so no objective trade out for these teams.
Yeah, Neoma was a little bit too weak there. There is a Frostbound on SOT, so if you can stall long enough, hold that thought. Vote, dashing in once again. Cyclone's got some juke shoes, and we'll be just fine. I mean, usually if I see a Jingwei dash in, I don't even think to address that, but because of last time where Vote hit every single auto attack, I had to relay the fact that there was a possible solo opportunity there.
Potentially so, especially if a couple lucky crits end up straying the way of Vote there. But Cyclone will be fine. He'll be able to sustain himself back up in the lane thanks to his Devourer's Gauntlet solo lane. Still has the box match going between them. It's a Berserker shield for one, Gladiator shield on the opposite side there for Nika, so a little bit of extra physical brought some power to his name and some extra damage. Once you start getting low, like SOT is right now, has that Eagles Rally, has got to find a way to use it, has got to use it soon, and he will find it over the wall, but a blink over by Cubo Fred, a double dash back in, and then the dance to start up. SOT does not have enough sustain to go through here. The jump off the mark by Layers. Nika will root him in place to force out the Ragnarok, and the Warriors will strike yet again to put SOT down.
Yeah, Layers was a little bit late to the fight there, wasn't able to help out, but it looks like Aurora is also making this rotation over. Another blink having to use for safety, so the blue buff is definitely going to go by the wayside. The speed buff you get once again, but Tartarus Titans also just a little bit late to that fight. It seemed like Cubo Fred was in the right place a little bit earlier, and Layers couldn't help out his solo laner, so now SOT is going to spend some time thinking about what relic he wants to get, but only level 11, so he's not going to get that option just yet.
Do you see a very early Lona's Mask rush here by Aurora? Sometimes we see this Lona's Mask go third, maybe fourth item before it's looked at. But Aurora's going to grab this one very early on in the game, which is maybe a little strange considering how little focus has been put on Aurora so far this game. I mean, obviously not hitting a whole lot of abilities here alongside Paul. Both the mages here sitting at the bottom of the player damage chart. But Aurora hasn't been the primary focus in this one. It's all been on this right side of the map.
You know what just told me that Aurora's not an Ox player? Paul was channeling his back, Aurora walked up, the back was almost completed, and then Aurora backed right next to him. Didn't dash into him, didn't dash into him to get back a couple seconds sooner. So Aurora, it's your
free taxi.
It's your first time playing Nox. I'm gonna let you off with a warning, but you gotta really be using the free taxi back to lane. But he does get that Lono's Mask. Still doesn't have the Gauntlet of Thieves up, but the Tartarus Titans actually are pulling this Pyromancer, but Dardas is here.
Paul's gonna use the Circle of Protection to try and guarantee that one. That was a little too close for comfort. That unruly magic out of Dardas almost steals that one away. If Dardas was like a half a second or maybe even lower than that, he probably could have stolen that with just that ability. Aurora will get knocked up by Cubo Fred. Layers will go in and find Neil, and that's an easy pick here. The Golden Apple does manage to clip Paul in the tail end of the fight. 3 of the Titans low, but it's Neil who goes down.
You can tell that Paul has that Void Stone built because that Apple should have done a heck of a lot more. Dardas has double Flat Pen, Divine Ruin, and Spear of Desolation, and that Apple did maybe like 300-400 damage. So right now, Paul does not really respect the damage coming out from Discordia. Gonna go into that Celestial Legion Helm, or I suppose the Jade Emperor's Crown, depending on which one he wants to itemize into. Either way, gonna have the protections available to try and survive here from both forms of damage, the magical and the physical. On this E set, Paul usually likes to go for the... We've seen a few different builds. We've seen the Polynomicons from Paul. We've seen the Ethereal Staffs, but it is going to be that Jade Emperor's Crown, recognizing there's a lot of physical damage on the side of the Oni Warriors, and he wants to be a tanky E set in that mid lane.
We'll see at least a return to farm here for these two teams. 14 minutes in, and the Tartarus Titans have about a 1,500 gold lead so far in this one around. Not as large as we saw in game number 1. Puts a little bit of worry here for the Titans. I mean, this is something we talked about at the start of the game, something that was talked about on the desk. Maybe some damage back over here towards Neil. Half HP on the Khepri after the onslaught of damage from the Titans. But as we approach this late game, I mean, the Warriors, they've got this Shiva to get them through the early game. So far, Cubo hasn't been able to make too many waves on this one, but it comes down to this Khepri, it comes down to this Discordia, and then also Vote on the Xingwei to be the big damage dealers as this late game comes around. Tartarus Titans will group up to take down the Tier 1 tower. A pull back in on the Layers will force a response out of Paul to get that silence off. Cubo Fred finds the knockup. Not going to find much more than that, though.
And the Tier 1 tower will be able to survive with about 30% HP, thanks to that rotation from Cubo. So now, trying to put a little bit of respect. Layers does not have that much HP. I don't think the fight after the fact is really what they're looking for. There's something on the left side of the map, though, that Primal Fury, and that is probably what they're looking for. Circle of Protection is available. Cyclone Spin has to hide. He knows that most of the Oni Warriors are making this rotation over, and he doesn't want to be caught out.
He doesn't have a Tier 1 tower to fall back to. Neil, locked in place by Aurora, and a Spirit Ball out of Paul. We'll get a little bit of damage, but not a whole lot of CC after. Neil will pull back SOT. So the clutches of 4 Warriors. Not a whole lot of follow-up damage, though. On towards this Bologna. Aurora will find yet another lockdown. This time on the Cubo Fred, but the Warriors not concerned with the damage output of the Titans right now.
Yeah, and it looks like Nika will rotate back over to solo lane. Came over just in case, said, hey, are you guys going to pull that Primal Fury? Looks like the answer is no, so going to back camps. But there still is a grouping around this Primal Fury. The Tartarus Titans are here, and they have Circle of Protection. It's really just, do they want to pull it, or are they baiting in? Right now, looks like they tried to bait in, didn't really work, and they're going back to farm the mid lane.
I gotta say, Nika is really thriving off the passes of this Discordia right now. It was a question like, do you tell Nika to back off, maybe let somebody else have that damage? The answer is no. Nika wants to have top player damage. She's gonna hold that top player damage, and maybe they can find a pick here onto SOT. Some good return fire, though, by Paul at SOT will scare the Warriors away from a continued engagement. And at 16.5 minutes, Charlie, we continue this farm game coming between these two teams, neither of them willing to make a risky pick.
Yeah, it's annoying because the Oni Warriors are winning the poke battle, but they really can't confidently pull this Gold Fury, or this Primal Fury rather, even if they win that poke battle. They just can't outburst Circle of Protection. Spirit Ball alone could create some problems for you. And if Aurora just silences, it's hard to get your confirm off, especially in a heat of the moment battle. So even with the Oni Warriors able to poke out or possibly win the trades, if you don't get a pick on the Paul, if you're not able to win this team fight handedly, there's going to be no sort of objective pull. They're going to have to just continue that farm game. And we know what the Oni Warriors can do if they go into the later stages of the game a little bit behind. Right now, they're virtually not behind. It's essentially even. It's a very small lead for the Tartarus Titans, about 500 gold right now. If this continues at the pace it did, I mean, you're looking at a very solid team fight in a couple minutes that the Oni Warriors are not afraid to take.
It's so wild how much of an XP gap was separating them, about 3K plus here. Most of that reflected here in the mid lane. Dardes level 17 to Paul, who just hit 16. Neil locked down by Aurora, picked up in the Ragnarok, and the beads expended by the Khepri. And that will be a turnaround kill here. The Titans are finally able to pick off this Khepri, and that might just be enough of an opening to start up towards this Gold Fury.
That was a great play by Aurora. Neilma has to use the beads for the Ragnarok, and then the silence goes down. Can't get that Scarab's blessing off, so Aurora does die. I mean, Neilma does die with ult up, and the Gold Fury will die very quickly soon after the fact.
No ult even needed by Paul, just a clean pick, and then a clean objective right after. Primal Fury goes to the Titans, and they'll finally be able to bump that gold back up now. We're sitting at 500 now. Let's jump that up to another 1,500 to put it at 2K for the Titans. Though still down 2,000 experience to the Oni Warriors. Again, that coming from that mid lane there. Even the side lanes here, Solo and then the Hunter, have got a little bit of a lead here. Pyromancer started up. Will Paul use the ult to go for the confirm? No, the Pyromancer will be released. Instead, it's a fight in by the Oni Warriors. Circle of protection, but 2 rooted out and 2 pushed out of it. Nika's doing a lot of damage with that war cry. Paul is low and Paul is gone. Aurora using SOT as a taxi to get out of the fight, but that's just gonna bring him right back into the fire. Cubo Fred with a massive sweep, and one more auto after will find the double kill for the Warriors and a 3-for-none pick.
That was such a good push, making sure that circle protection heal did not go off, and Nika ate none of the damage there. Tartarus is gonna chuck the apple right back in his face.
That's a pumpkin.
Not too worried. That was a pumpkin, you're right. Different skin, same concept, but it looks like Layers is trying to step up, but that Fire Giant's gone. No one is even close. Cyclone, you're gonna have to run away. No sort of defense from the Tartarus Titans. You've lost 3 members. There's nothing you can do about that one, and it was just great play. Of course, Neilma starts that fight. I mean, we even say that fight. Getting picked, Primal Fear goes down, and then they're just able to find the fight after the fact. Now, the Oni Warriors are about to answer back. They get 1 tier 1 tower. It looks like they're going for a tier 2 as well. No sort of minions just yet, but they're not too worried. There's no one on this side of the map anyways.
They'll be able to grab this one, no problem. And that lead that the Titans had just reestablished is now already shot right back down the complete opposite way. A 4K gold swing here for the Oni Warriors with a 3-man pick and 2 towers right after, plus Fire Giant, and add a Pyromancer to the table on this one. Oni Warriors, we keep talking about these late game compositions that they go for. They keep banking on getting to these 25+ minute engagements, these 30-minute games, and it's still working for them here in this second one here up against the Titans.
Yeah, it's just really hard to make the Tartarus Titans draft work effectively if you're not hitting every little bit of damage. Of course, Aurora had some great lockdown, but it was on a Khepri. So you kill the Khepri, that's all well and good, but what do you do after the fact? You lose a team fight. That seems to be the play. Layers has been very active in the early stages of the game, but that 2-0 has been like that for quite some time, something like 15 minutes or so. So Layers has not been able to find much success on this Fenrir, sort of just sitting around while his team dies and says, I can't go in. I literally cannot help you. There's just not enough being done here. So going to be even harder now because this is a stone-cutting sword serrated edge. There's a bit of auto-attack damage there for the Fenrir, but besides that, it's going to be hard to get your full cycle of abilities off in the later stages of the game, especially when Vote already has Ornate Arrow, has Wind Demon, and now Deathbringer has been completed. So big crits, and there's no Spectral Armors as of right now.
Not for lack of trying, at least by Layers. He's been able to find some of these pickups, and some of those kills have been going over towards his team. Paul was able to find one, even Aurora getting close to grabbing one earlier on, so he's at least helping out the team assist-wise, but hasn't been able to find any other kills just yet. That 2-0 has been sitting there for quite some time. Nika versus SOT in the jungle, while the rest of the fight is over at this tier 2 tower. And just watching 2 soul laners at this HP box each other, and by the way, both of them have the scepter around themselves, so I'm pretty sure the Shocky Boy is doing more damage than they are to each other.
Oh yeah, the trades are going to be massive here. Finally, this tier 2 tower will start to get whittled down a little bit, but you have to put some respect on Cubo wrapping around. Nika is going to blink in.
Finds 2 with the ultimate, and will be able to zone the Titans away from the tier 2 tower. And that's all that the Warriors need to grab there. So, only one tower left standing on the map on the side of the Tartarus Titans. The Oni Fury still about a minute from respawning itself here, so instead the Titans will take their time to clear out what little jungle is still standing on the side of the Titans, and now will make their march over towards the mid lane with one more minion wave. The Warriors can strip the entirety of the structures off the map.
Yeah, we see 4 level 20s for the Oni Warriors and just 2 on the side of the Tartarus Titans. Layers just ticked over, and it looks like this tier 2 tower is not going to stay for much longer. Already quite weak, and the Tartarus Titans are not going to be able to defend that one, though. Nika transforms, but doesn't want the Phoenix. Will just back off. It looks like this Fire Giant was vastly used to close that gold lead and then enhance it for the Oni Warriors. Now that that Oni Fury rather is about to spawn in. Wait, they got a trickle of something else.
Maybe thinking somebody stepped a little too far forward. They saw Paul on the map, but then they also saw SOT and said, all right, probably not worth trying to force this fight over here. 15 seconds left on Fire Giant, and they'll use those last few seconds here, they being the Oni Warriors, to take away the last Fury. Maybe find a pick onto SOT. First auto goes through, hits SOT, Layers picks up Neil with the Ragnarok, and Neil is taking a lot of damage. Use that Scarab's Blessing for himself. Can he find the way out? Yes, it will, because of the backline. It's Cubo Fred. He takes down Layers. Solar Protection gets a lot of damage, but not a lot of healing there. Boat finds 1, Boat finds 2, and Cubo will chase down Aurora, pull him back in with the sweep, and it's Nika versus Cyclone Spin and Dardes, and Cyclone is going to lose that battle. It's a triple kill for Vote, a deicide for the Oni Warriors, and it's 30 seconds until anybody is back on the side of the Titans. The Oni Warriors, with this team fight, after the Fire Giant had already expired, Trelly, they could and they should be able to walk right in and end this game, take game 2, and put themselves up in the set to make them that much closer to getting this one out.
That's just another case of the Tartarus Titans getting baited by the Kepriel. They think they can pick Neil Ma. They try, they get Scarab's Blessing down, and then they just overcommit. They use way too much to get not much back. Of course, the Fire Giant buff ran off, but the lead was there. They were able to spend the gold for most of those towers going down, so the Oni Warriors played that FG perfectly, and then they said, wait, let's not leave. Let's go back. Layers thought he was the one engaging, but the Oni Warriors found the answer back. Just a great play around that Kepri that is super annoying to deal with.
I mean, it always comes down, like, once the Fire Giant buff expired, almost every single one of these players, believe me, sitting inside the boots when they come in on these media days, you see even in these casual games, they'll still slap down, hey, we got a beats timer on this one, we got a Fire Giant at this point, you know these guys are clocking, okay, Fire Giant buff is off, we could probably go back in here. Typically, that's when teams will leave. Fire Giant's gone, not the Warriors this time around. They use that advantage to their own. They're able to take game number 2 and put themselves up 2 on the set. Can they sweep it out here? We'll find out right after this.
1.
It's a 2-0 here for the Warriors. And Mifflin, we can talk about that game in just a second. I want to thank everyone for watching the SMITE Pro League here, powered by Prime Gaming. Now, you just watched a fun ad showcasing a ton of games that you can get. And might I add that you can get a ton of exclusive content with a Prime sub to Prime Gaming. But not only do you get, there we go, the free delivery and the music, movies, etc. that come with a Prime membership at base, but you also get a ton of exclusive content, free games, a free monthly Twitch sub that you can use on the day of to whatever favorite streamer you happen to be watching. If you're like me, it's at the time, or if you just want to throw support anywhere, like here. Either way, you can do it wherever you want. And of course, seasonal discounts and other surprise perks. If you're already a Prime Gaming subscriber, then come on, use these while you can. It's going to be great for you. Thanks to Prime Gaming for sponsoring the SPL. And of course, thanks to the Warriors for giving us some entertaining games. This one, Mifflin, a little different than game number one. Game number one, it's like, okay, cool, the Titans are winning, and then, oh no, the Titans are losing. This game was very even for, 15, 16 minutes, and then the Warriors start to win out on these fights, and they start pulling ahead. And then eventually it just feels like no matter what, they're going to be the ones that come out on top, and they do.
Yeah, and it's something that we talked about on the desk. One way to deal with that E-set-focused, objective gameplay where she just walks over and drops the ultimate is to make sure that you're not giving over opportunities where you can set up for those scenarios. And with Cubo Fred getting as involved as he did on this Shiva, constantly creating action, constantly finding dives, constantly putting people low HP, it made it very difficult for the Tartarus Titans to utilize the main strength of E-set, which is the ability to go towards these objectives and net yourself some of these leads into the late game. And then what rears its head, I think, is the execution-based nature of the composition the Tartarus Titans have.
Yeah.
It is just so hard, I think, for them to play this style of draft. Not even against the Oni Warriors draft specifically, but even then, yes, because of the CC immunity that Cubo Fred has, Nika as well, Vote, how slippery he is on Jingwei. But just having Nox be your primary initiator, for the most part, I think very difficult. All of the CC that the Tartarus Titans has is single target. Sure, Paul's got a whole lot, but Spirit Ball, for the most part, isn't going to be what initiates the fight, which means you're probably not burning beads with it. You're not really able to burn everybody's beads as a Nox, as Shadowlock is only on one guy, and the same can be said of Ragnarok on the other end. So it felt like the CC immunity of the Oni Warriors was never really under threat, and if you're not able to threaten that, that means you're probably not able to force their resources before a fight, which means that you're always going to have an advantage as the Oni Warriors in the team fight, and they just did.
008 there for Dardes in mid, playing pretty much assist king. I think we got to see a lot of fun plays from Cuvo. Nika, you had mentioned as well, but Vote, it's always interesting. I will say one of those highlights, the minute I was thinking, man, Vote's doing really well with his autos. I saw him miss a few, but granted, in the middle of a team fight, who cares about a few autos when you're going to be hitting as hard as Vote did? Only 7,800 damage.
Out-damaged by Cyclone by 2 hundo.
But still won. So, hey, guess what? Maybe the damage isn't everything there. And you know what? I think it's the kill conversion. That's the thing I keep talking about, right? It's just like, if you're getting, if you get 6,000 damage, but you've got 5 kills, they've got 12,000 damage and no kills. Who cares about their 12K? Your 6K was more important for your team. Granted, there's also a then if somebody on your team did 18K, you were probably just stealing everything that you could see.
Yeah, you got carried.
But sometimes if you're a carry, that's exactly what you want to do, right? You want to try to do whatever you can, get the gold, and well, we'll see what kind of adaptations the Titans can make to things like that. Getting hit by autos, not necessarily the easiest thing to try and avoid.
Wow.
Changing picks and bans, something you can do. Daji, IMC, those are the same 2 starters, but they ban the E-set away. They don't want it anymore, and they don't want the Warriors to have it.
Yeah, and first pick, the Tartarus Titans have been going towards that E-set themselves. Now we'll be able to look a little bit elsewhere in the draft. Maybe Paul goes back towards some of these more standard hyper carry style of mages. Feels like when Paul's back is against the wall, things like Hell, where he tends to lean, or even the Scylla, I think could become a topic of conversation, but surprised that the Tartarus Titans are willing to ban out that E-set, because generally when I think of the Oni Warriors, sure, we have seen ESET a couple of times, but that's not the style of composition they generally like to play. And that's a smart adaptation, man. Immediately calling out, all right, well, if you're not going to play the ESET, we might as well get rid of that next best. You're not sustaining me. You're not playing this healer that goes Breastplate of Valor and a whole lot of survivability. So Paul going to have to dig it a little bit deeper into his own god pool.
Yeah, it's always hard when like you scroll through and you just go, okay, cool. What else has been seen in mid? There's a lot of Zeus, and then you got to keep going. And this is not exaggerating. And then there's the Hell. Okay, cool. Hebo, Habla has been played, but I'm sure one of those had to have been in the jungle. There was a Thoth game, and now we're at the point where I'm literally like anything I list only had one game going into this week. So the Titans haven't had to deviate too much from the beaten path. And they've been very happy with it. Shiva is going to be their first pick. This has been one very powerful for them. But, it comes to the same conversation I believe we had like a little bit yesterday. Ario, Yamoja, both available. Yamoja gets locked in. And so, for layers, this is a pick that we've seen be very prominent, do very good things early on for them. But this has to be a stellar performance to make the first pick, especially giving up a Yamoja Jingwei to be worthwhile.
Yeah, and if they don't take Shiva here, they lose Shiva. There's no way the Oni Warriors allow
they
that
scoop
through.
it up no matter what.
So I'm not even certain that you have to say, like, oh, tons of onus on him to perform. I think the onus belongs to the fact that you are just playing an early game pick that is possibly the strongest level 2 god in the game, so you generally want to see him perform regardless.
Let the light be the judge.
And, well, Layers has had some very good performances on this pick in particular. Another high execution comp.
Yeah, immediately.
Another a very high execution comp from the Tartarus Titans. Nox, again, generally single target inner CC, at least has a little bit more CC core built around her thanks to the Shiva. Olaran, though, is going to struggle in the early portions, and the Oni Warriors so far haven't drafted a whole lot of early game pressure. Jingwei and Yamoja will likely get the advantage in lane. Not a whole lot of kill advantage, I think. It's more so about being able to clear the wave consistently. So potential there. That said, I have had the opportunity to talk to Stuart in the past, one of the more premier, more likely to go towards Olaran players in the SPL, and he and the rest of the guys in the room tend to agree that Olaran is late game slanted, but at level 3, Olaran might be one of the most oppressive dual laners because of his damage output. You go towards that Gilded Arrow, you're swinging for upwards of like 86 per auto attack, able to stack up that second ability very quickly. Your burst damage gets really high, and it's very difficult to dive him until you have an ultimate available because of his third ability having that self-heal and having that knock-up. So I think curious to see how this one is able to perform. But already, again, it is very difficult to play Nox on her own. It's very difficult to play Olaran on his own. And now 2 of them together, that's a very hard to perform in lane.
Now, I'm about to ask you something that feels ludicrous to ask. But I'm gonna ask it anyway. Nox mid? Is that even in the realm? Like I've gone on record, and I'm fine to say this. I think she makes a better support, like just through and through. Like she's got good lockdown, good silence, big AOE. Her ult makes the enemy team do less damage. Like a lot of what I look at in her kit feels like it's just better over there for that style of play. But like ESET started out over in the support and slowly has shifted back over towards mid. Could Nox make the same transition?
I mean, I think so. Of course, that's what, like from conception, that's what she was intended to be, right? Yeah. She was intended to be a mid laner. But when you think of the difference in execution for Nox in mid versus Nox in support, it's how often can you land Siphon Darkness? How often is that second ability really applying the damage? You miss it as a support, who cares? You landed Shadow Lock. That's all you really need. Who cares? You got the ultimate, and now somebody's dealing less damage to you. But in mid, you need to be on point with those ultimates. You need to find priority targets. You need to be able to land your damage from that second ability. Can she do it? Absolutely. Is Paul a mechanical enough player to perform on it? Absolutely. But is it much, much less consistent? Is it going to have a much lower low or higher highs? Yes to both. But more often, it's the lows that rear their head.
Yeah, so presumably, or at least I'm gonna jump into this, assuming that this is probably. Well, I guess we've seen Olaran mid, although I guess both can really kind of flip and flop there, so that'll be very fun. And there is the hair. Dart has read the tweet. Mike said the thing, and we read the thing, which was specifically, Did you want to say it, or
No.
were you were coming up with a different thought?
I'd like to posit.
Oh yeah, okay.
In allowing the peer pressure of PBM to affect your
He
drafting
owns
phase.
your team now.
Yeah, not only does he own your team, not only does he live in your head rent-free, but is this the coward move? Is it cowardice that forces you to lock in a god because some other guy called you a coward for not doing it?
Man, that's a good.
Yeah, peer pressure.
That's a deep thinker.
Peer pressure is a hell of a drug, man.
And you know what? Say no.
Yeah, I think so.
In the right times. If they're peer pressuring you for like positive things, maybe then
Yeah,
maybe you listen.
if they're bullying you into
You know,
the
it's
gym,
actually
you know.
incredibly contextual, realistically. If everyone's saying like, "Hey, man, I think that maybe you should go talk to a therapist and like see like if maybe you need medication," like they're probably looking out for you a little bit, or they're just being
Or they're
really
gaslighting
really
you.
mean.
Yeah.
Or like the other peer pressures.
Maybe don't listen to anybody ever.
Yeah, actually, you know what?
Look inward.
Lock yourself away. And make sure that no one can ever tell you anything.
Isolationist.
Yeah,
I like that.
you can never be peer pressured if you have no friends.
Okay, well, you can have friends.
Nope. Say no to everybody. Isolate.
You can have friends.
Go
guys.
off grid. Live deep in the forest.
You guys can have friends.
Off your own.
Ask
own-
me about the drafts, man.
Okay. Hera, how do you think, outside of whether or not Hera is cowardice to lock in or was cowardice to not play, does it fit the team?
I think so. I mean, when you're talking about Hera, it's a lot of that self-peel, that survivability, having an additional guy to help you out. I'm talking about Argus, having that HP shield up against this large single-target damage output. I think it does make a good deal of sense here. Also, will put a lot of threat on the beads. I think that's one of the most slept-on assets that Hera brings. Polymorph is just super strong. It is just a stifling ability. When you think about it, it's a disarm and a silence at the same time.
Yeah.
You can't do anything besides walk when you've been polymorphed, which means you're probably going to be using your beads just to deal with that. So does it fit the composition? Yes. But now the Oni Warriors are going to struggle a little bit more so in objective play. You don't have the best objective burn in this composition, and you certainly don't have the best objective secure. So I'm curious about how that's going to transition them into the mid to late game.
Well, I guess we'll have to watch. The late game so far has been pretty solid, but will the Warriors be able to do it this time? Only Game 3 will tell. The Titans need to turn it around, and they need to turn it around now. Let's find out if they can.
I don't know if history's any indication from game 1 and 2. If I'm the Titans, I don't want this one going to the late game up against the Oni Warriors here. Nika going back on the Kakul, and Cubo Fred going to the Gilgamesh. Surprisingly, we haven't seen much of him yet here so far, Trelly. It's me, J-Mac. I got Trelly with me, and Doug as well here. Game number 3 in this best of 5 between the Titans and the Warriors. Vote gets to go back to the Jingwei yet again.
They don't. He loves the
He's
Jingwei, man.
And he's popping off with it. That's the difference. It's one thing if he just likes the pick and he's doing okay. He's popping off with this pick.
Yeah, and they don't seem to mind it. I don't know. Maybe to be fair, the Tartarus Titans did end up drafting a more late game composition. They have double ADC, which I think bodes a lot better than what they have been going with. Layers is going to be on the Shiva, still getting that early pressure. And then SOT on this Ama means, number 1, their objective shred is going to be absurd. And number 2, they still will have that late game presence with these triple auto attackers, essentially. On the flip side, though, the Oni Warriors, they've got vote on Jingwei. So in my head, their late game's just fine. They're going to be just fine. If you're just tuning in for game 3, trust me, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, it'll be good over there for that dual lane. We do have the mid lane matchup, one we haven't seen in a long time, and one that we don't have a whole lot of data on individually. We'll talk about that maybe after this skirmish kind of peters out here in the solo lane. I say that, but another ability comes up there for Layers. But mid lane, Uller versus Hera, not one we get to talk a whole lot about, but between Dardas and Big Man Tings, they're one of the only 2 players in this league who really like going towards this Hera pick. That Argus can be so impactful early and late game, having a 6th body on the map. And it's not like Calder where he goes out and he's real easy to kill. Argus is a beefy pet to throw out.
Yeah, Argus is definitely going to help out in the later stages of the game, but right now, I mean, I'm about to say this as we see Dardas winning the trade for now, but Hera's going to have a hard time clearing the wave and not going to want to fight Uller. But, you know, I'm just being constantly proven wrong as we see. I think Paul missed the axe, and so we're going to blame him for that. That's not my fault if Paul hits those.
Yeah, come on, Paul, hit your axes. What are you doing?
That's what I'm saying. Hera has to step up very far if she wants to hard clear the way, but Paul is going to jump in here.
Cubo blinks past the jump in on towards Paul. A sweep by Layers to find Dardas. Axe toss needs to be there from Paul, or maybe just that volley if he can find it, but it will not. Dardas does have the shield to get a lot of extra HP. Cubo, who started that fight out, is one of the worst in the trade. He got sent back to base.
Yeah, so back to the old wave clear where Tartarus, again, the first ability, you have to get very close to the wave to make sure you hit those melees. The polymorph you can clear from downtown, but it just doesn't do that much damage right now. So if Tartarus wants to effectively clear the wave, you got to get into barrel stuff axe range, and that's where Uller loves to be, at least in these early stages. So Tartarus is going to have a little bit of a deficit in the gold department just for a bit, letting the minions go under tower. But once you get about an item online, maybe two, you can pretty much just full clear the way from a distance. And that's where Uller does not want you to be. The full range where the axes, you have a lot of time to read it and juke. That's when Uller says, hey, maybe I'll go somewhere else and find some farm. But I think Paul really wanted to try and dominate this lane because the way the game's been going thus far, he has had some success late game, but in the early stages, he really just has to sit by the wayside and, you know, wait until everyone gets their items online, and at that point, everyone's doing big damage. So we'll go for that Transcendence, and once that gets online, we'll definitely see this Uller get active.
Glad you kept going there because it gave me time to. I was originally going to ask you before you ended there. Do you think that Tartarus is going towards a Doom Orb with this item? Because he did pick up that Tier 1 lost artifact alongside of Sands of Time, which usually means no Chronos Pennant jumping by Paul, a good knockup by Layers, but maybe an even better polymorph by Tartarus. Some good return poke will keep them back here. But typically when we see Sands of Time and then lost artifact, you're not really going for that very early 30% CDR with like a Chronos Pennant. Maybe Charon's Coin, or if you really want to go for it, maybe Rada Tahuti here. But Tartarus will be going down to the Doom Orb route here for this here. I mean, how do you feel about on this god?
Yeah, with Conduit Gem, I think Chronos Pennant can be very effective, but with Hera, not very much movement, just your shield as your movement speed. Doom Orb is going to help out a lot. Being able to just drop Argus and then kite is always going to be a solid bet as Neil goes in to make sure to tank that one up. I think Bo probably could have taken a fair bit of damage, but I do like the Doom Orb. Once you're just full clearing the wave and then you can zoom away, make sure you're spamming your abilities as much as possible to get Argus back off cooldown, because that's how the cooldown works on that character. You want to make sure getting Argus up as much as possible. Aurora, though, tries to steal away the Harpy with the ult.
He may have been able to grab that one experience-wise, but the offering will go the way of the Warriors. Now, Titans over here at the mid, they'll be able to grab the two that come from that mid camp there. Paul will be able to grab the Oracle Harpies, and that'll continue to get a little bit of gold here to the side of Titans. Not much of a lead, only about 200 or so early on, 300 there, and same with the XP. No kills just yet, means we haven't seen anything explode out, but at least not for lack of trying. Cubo and Layers have both been getting very active in this mid lane to try and put some pressure on these, on this mage and this hunter. I can't really say these mages, these mid laners is the proper way to say it.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to find too much. I still think Dardes is the easiest target on the map to kill. Argus does a fair bit of damage, but as long as you're able to avoid that knockup or the polymorph, both if you can try, then you really don't have too much to worry about. The shield not that big in the early stages of the game, so Dardes is going to have to play pretty far back still. But as the later stages go on, if Paul ever jumps in like an axe misses, Dardes has 100-0 potential in spades. But it looks like another triple chalice. So the Oni Warriors have put themselves once again about 1,000 gold behind it. I consider it an investment, because if you look on the left side of the map, everyone's going to be buying potions throughout the game. You get this chalice online, the later it goes, the more you get your money's worth. So just smart investors are the Oni Warriors.
Aurora trying to steal some offerings away. It seems he was able to grab at least one there, maybe. That obelisk is very close to stacked up for the side of Titans. Two more offerings should grab that one up there. Fully stack it up. Layers, again, deep in enemy territory here inside the Oni Warriors jungle. Try and steal away some back Harpies. He will do so with that emblazoned sweep. Just enough damage to clear that one out. Cubo Fred probably doesn't want to pick this fight alone, but he's not alone. He's got 3 other teammates around him to fight in the 2v4. Ultimate in by Nika will get the dance out of Layers. Neilma will lock them in place, though, with the River's Rebuke, and the stuns right after. Layers cannot find a way out. Does manage to get the dash. SOT very low, but that stun from his ultimate, it was just enough to buy him time and save his life. Cubo Fred with a blink in, the drop kick against the wall. One more auto will finally put up first blood for the Warriors.
I was going to say, no way Neil's clutch River's Rebuke there is going to get wasted, and thank goodness it was not. They were able to clutch that one up and make sure to chase that down. SOT and Layers had to split up there. I mean, Cubo could have chased them both, had to pick one, but now Paul's going to make the rotation and try to catch Cubo out, but not enough damage anymore. Even with the axe, you already missed the blade. It's going to be too much, and Nico is here to help just in case, so that wave will get pushed out in mid, but it looks like Aurora is going to hold it for the mid laner. So great engage, and you got to give credit to the walls there by Neil. Able to catch them both out, but only SOT falls.
The fact that only one person died during all that might be the most impressive, and it was a 4v2 in the right side jungle, now 4v2 over by this red buff, but Neil and Dardes wisely will not step up to try and slow that one down. They'll just give up the red buff, not worth losing their life over here. Now allow the Tartarus Titans to pick up this left side mid Harpy. SOT actually out securing 2 to make sure he gets his blue buff. Cubo Fred and Nika unsuccessful in grabbing that one out here. We see Nika once again on this Kakullan, and once again going for the sovereignty, so some of that extra HP 5 in the lane, some of that Fizz defense to deal with the double Fizz warriors that he's going up against in that side.
Yeah, whenever you do see the double Fizz jungle, I think you can get some value out of this sovereignty, especially if Cubo wants to group up with Nika and say, hey, let's try to 2v2 this. And more often than not, they're going to win just off of builds alone, really just depending on how the abilities go. But Nika has a fair bit of pressure in this lane because SOT was able to fall. You push in the wave, and now he's raged up. So you don't really want to box a Cullen when he's angry like that. Probably just want to try and avoid him as much as possible. We're just going to see in that lane constantly spamming the aggression. Whenever you see a Kakullan in lane, usually just wants to transform pretty much every wave if you can. Anytime you can stack up that rage, you want to be constantly going for it as a roar. Tries to catch out Cubo. No beads on the Gilgamesh, so these Shadow Locks will stick some poke.
Cubo is holding the wave for Dardes, but he's going to be getting a decent bit of poke here. Layers does miss the knockup. Cubo Fred and Dardes will be able to clear out the wave. Another Shadow Lock off the mark by Aurora. Missed out on 2 of those so far here into the mid. And that Polymorph does tag Layers. That'll force them back. The Tartarus Titans at the very least. But even with that first blood bounty, the Tartarus Titans still do hold a very small gold lead up. So the farm game out of Titans has been just a little bit better so far here in Game 3.
I'm always curious to see how these Olorons like to itemize. Obviously, the Ring of Hecate or the Ring of Hecate, either one they like to go for first. Going to use some life steal, some attack speed, some damage. That's always going to be solid. But then this time around, it looks like Cyclone will go for the Typhons. That's going to help out your life steal, a little bit of percentage damage as well, and it just stacks well with the ring. So it looks like that's going to be the first option here, usually into like a Telkine's ring. Lots of attack speed on Oleron, but we've also seen the damage build where you want to try to get crit as much as possible. I mean, you're against Vote, who's been critting a fair bit already. You want to try to match that, and it looks like both lanes are going to invade right and left.
SOT did use his ultimate, though, to secure that blue buff. He should be fine to get away from Cubo and Nika. Meanwhile, now 4 versus 1. Neil steps into the jungle and may have been just a little bit too far. Will not find his way to his own Riptide. Instead, he'll find his way to the grave, by the way, of Paul's hands there. First kill on the board now for the Titans.
Yeah, they answer back, and now Paul with the lead is going to make that mid lane even more disastrous. It looks like Dardes is going to have to sit way back there. Great axe into the Shadow Lock. Not going to be too much follow-up damage, but this is where Dardes is going to have to sit for quite some time now. I mean, Paul has the lead, should be finishing this Jotun's Wrath soon, and those axes are going to be coming out a fair bit, and hold that thought, they're going for Gold Fury here.
Boat is here, so there is still some steal. Dardes as well. Argus is available to the mid laner, and he's going to drop it on top of 2. Aurora has to just right inside of Cyclone's mid, but can Cyclone get far enough? No, it's a double kill for Dardes just off the damage from that alone. Drop kick out of Cubo will make sure that Layers has to invest a lot more to find Boat. He will get the kill, but will Layers go down after Rouge's Rebuke? Will lock the Shiva and keep him out of one escape path, and the final beat has been beat out of Layers. Instead, he will go down. It's a triple kill unofficially for Dardes, and look at where Nika is the entire time bullying Paul under the tier 2 tower. Look at Nika to get that kill. Yes, he will. It's a 4 for swing for the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, perfect immune on the axe. Nika has plenty of physical defense and damage, able to dive that one. So just a little bit overzealous pulling that Gold Fury. I understand that the fact that you think you have the lead, but it was just a little bit too much, and a great rotation from Dardes. I mean, probably knew that there was no wards there, but making that backwards rotation where if there was any sort of vision, he probably just gets caught out was risky. But I imagine Dardes said, hey guys, they've got no vision. I'm just going to sneak up and drop Argus. Gets the beautiful double kill, and then the chase after the fact. So answer back from the Tartarus Titans. Now the gold lead is slightly in their favor, not by much. Pretty much evened up the game, I would say, after the aggression the Tartarus Titans have been exerting. But now just straight 1 death for everyone on the map for the Tartarus Titans. Just you see 1 in the column. Everyone has fallen, but there's a 3-0 Hera in mid lane. I'm not calling Dardes a coward if I'm PBM.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, are you calling him a coward for picking the pick under pure pressure? That was the question that was raised on the desk. Is he a coward because he locked it because someone called him a coward if he didn't?
We don't even know if he saw the tweet. Dardes just might have wanted to play Hera. Who knows?
That's fair. He may have heard one of us talk about it, though. Maybe that was enough for him to kind of get a checkup in there. But as far as a checkup in this game and this series so far, the Oni Warriors, every time they've made it to the late game, they've been able to find a win in this setup against the Titans. That's why they're up 2-0 right now in this best of 5. And if the late game is where they were doing so well, the fact that they're getting to that late game a little bit earlier and not behind like they had in Game 1 and Game 2 could be disastrous. Maybe a bit too much of a word to say, but could be harsh, at least for the Titans, as we move towards these later games.
Yeah, we'll have to see if they are able to answer back here, but Cubo is just sort of W-keying at the moment, just bullying Aurora. No one's around. Finally, Cyclone Spin makes the rotation to help out his support, but Cubo has no beads available. This is still a level 11 Gilgamesh with just a blink, so any sort of CC will stick, but look where they are. They're so far up.
We got to have a 5 versus 5 at the enemy red buff right now. Layers has to get out the Winter Shamash, not enough damage. Ultimate from Aurora will clip 3, and a Sanctified Field to slow down the entire team fight. Nika goes down to Cyclone Spin. Layers is back up and healthy after the fight. The River's Rebuke are taking so long to crash through. Darkness will finally go down. It's SOT picking up the kill there, and SOT finds another one, but Neil teams up to finally take down Layers, but that is a 3-for-1 make it. A 4-for-1 now going to the Titans.
That was way too far to push into the Sanctified Field. Cyclone Spin, pretty much the only way you're killing Nika right now is if you lock him down and auto-attack him with magical damage, and that's exactly what they did. A perfect CC chain, as well as whenever Oleron's in that Sanctified Field, he's essentially a machine gun, just autoing him down perfectly. Now they answer back with this gold fear. You can hide in our red buff, but we've got an Oleron here, and he's got a solid lead now. Still level 13 at the moment, but they'll be able to pick up a lot more, passing this gold fear back and forth. I didn't think it would take them this long to get it, but now they've got some gold to spend, and next time it'll go down quicker.
Tartarus Titans, one big team fight swing has now bumped them back up into the lead. Again, ever so slightly, about 2K up are the boys in blue, this order side team. 2K XP as well is nice. That'll be mitigated a little bit here, at least by the Warriors. A Pyromancer started up and no answer back from the Titans here. But that team fight, man, and this is why it's always so hard to ever discount an Oleron, is that Sanctified Field is just such a devastating ability to drop in the middle of a team fight, especially when you can get as many people as Cyclone did with it.
Yeah, and Nika doesn't have beads or anything like that. The lockdown will stick, and you don't even have magical defense at the moment. It was just Sovereignty and Glad Shield. It looks like they will be chasing a little bit into the enemy jungle here. So the Tartarus Titans, they know there's not much to go for. No shot. They're going for the tower. There's no way they're going to go for the FG this early.
Ooh, Aurora, I don't think he got the dash around the wall that he was hoping for. Instead, he dashed into the crevice of the wall, and now the chase onto Nika has been given up by the Titans. They can still get at least some tower pressure here. They're all going to be melee range to get in that one. Aurora's not going to stick around. So SOT will be fine. Meanwhile, Vote, even despite being down a little bit, and here to Cyclone Spin, will continue to put pressure up on towards that tier 1 tower. Aurora does have that Lona's Mask finish up for these ensuing fights. Zardes drops Argus on top of Paul, but maybe needs to pull it back to focus on Layers, who's just using that Pillar of Dawn to get some of that extra damage mitigation through. Paul misses the axe toss, and that should be the end of the fight, at least for both these teams, but SOT still pushing up.
Yeah, Vote makes the rotation over as well. Looks like Aurora was also trying to find a Shadow Lock there, so essentially just a wasted teleport, a lot of ultimates used, but if you do lose that fight too-handedly, there could be an FG pull. At this point, there's a fair bit of damage on the map for the Tartarus Titans. You have double ADCs, and if Argus is there, you can burn through FG pretty quickly through the Oni Warriors as well. So I think everyone is going to want to make sure you're showing up to these fights at the very least. You want to show face. Don't want to lose just because you're down a man. So SOT teleporting, probably a solid idea. Looks like Paul is going into the Titan's Bane third item there, wanting to deal with a lot of the protections that we've already seen built. We've seen the Berserker Shield, Sovereignty, Glad Shield, and then, of course, the Gauntlet of Thebes. So a lot of protections already. This Ullr is going to start swinging as the game goes on, not only onto the squishy targets, you see the Transcendence and the Jotun's Wrath, but the Titan's Bane's going to help out a ton when you're trying to kill these tanks.
I'm going to talk about some objective burn here. Neil Ma picking up the Belt of the Berserker and fully upgrading that one, I should say, here at level 12. So a lot of shred now on the side of the Warriors with that relic there. Even with some of the nerfs that have come its way, still seems to be a decently popular item amongst the supports. Aurora on the opposite side going for the Bracer. Very similar in that regard to giving you a nice little bit of power spike, but also acts as that ward.
Yeah, Aurora's a bracer or die kind of guy. He doesn't ever want to go towards the belt. He's like, I want this ward damage that also you can place in lane, you can place on FG, you can place it wherever you want. The vision plus the buff is always going to help you out. So we'll have to see which one ends up working more. It looks like that'll finally be the Shoguns here, because whenever you see a double ADC comp, actually the Oni Hunter Garb could be pretty solid as well. Aurora is on this Nox with the Lono's Mask, so any sort of item that's going to give you the mitigations, you probably make some use out here. Good axe by Paul, and Cubo's getting chunked.
Lord, Cubo is almost down here. Layers will get the knockup, but a good polymorph out of Tartarus will stop Layers in his tracks. Now put an end to the engagement in mid, maybe not so much in right. Nika down 2 levels to SOT. Only 1 death to his name, similar to SOT, but the farm that the Titans have been getting across the map and the pressure that SOT has been able to have here, grabbing that tier 1 tower, has put Nika pretty far behind for the Warriors. Still, a lot of pressure thrown up towards the solo laner, and Cyclone Spin walked into 3 people, got hit by Riptide. But meanwhile, Vote is just going to get some split pushing, and with that knowledge, the Tartarus Titans will re-engage the fight. It's a teleport in now by Nika, but Cubo Fred is already gone. Neilma should be gone as well right after the Shadowlock just left the mark. The sweep to pull him right back in. Nika finds a root, but that's all he'll find. Paul has the damage to take down Neil.
Yeah, Vogue gets the tier 2 tower and is now able to fly in, but at this point you're already down 2. Looks like the tier 2 tower will be looked at here, and you have an enraged Kukulin, but you're not stepping up for this tier 2 tower. SMT is going to try in front line, but they're going to get the tower and back off.
Tower should be at least the end call there for the Titans. Maybe Fire Giant, but Dardas does still have ultimate, so it could be a risky play. Layers, who had ult that entire time, will use it to heal up the team. 3 versus 5 at the Fire Giant. Nika, no ultimate. Vote has ultimate, but also doesn't have much health. SOT is bullying him in the back line, and it's going to take all 3 of the Warriors to peel SOT away. Nika walking back in. Dardas doesn't have Argus to use here. Sanctified Field drop down. Dardas has to use the beads to get back out of it. Fire Giant is low and will go down to the Tartarus Titans, and the Dardas will also go down to the Tartarus Titans. It's SOT who picks up 1. Nika locked in place, and the ultimate out of SOT to take him down.
Cubo tries to rotate in a little bit too little, too late. He will also fall, and now it's just the duo lane left to try and fend off some of this aggression. Paul doesn't have the mana to continue this chase, but they're not looking for the kills. They want this right side Phoenix. There's a bit of time between these respawns. They don't really have enough damage to try and end, I don't think, but this Phoenix will certainly go down.
Phoenix should fall. I don't think we'll have an end call here by the Titans. They'll take the safe route, just grab the Phoenix and then back themselves away. Not the best Phoenix to take for future Fire Giant pulls, but still able to take that bird down and force attention to this right side lane here. And just a conveyor belt by the Warriors going into there. I mean, they started the fight 3v5, and then the 2 who were dead finally come back in, and then they just start going in one by one to try and stop this pursuit. By the time Fire was down, everybody's already separated and surrounded.
Yeah, trying to get the FG buffs off, I understand you. If you can get those kills, it's going to be worth your while, obviously, so that no one gets to use this full Fire Giant. But once you conveyor belt in like that, as you mentioned, you sort of just stagger your deaths, and you get nothing accomplished. They weren't able to find any sort of picks, and you lose right Phoenix now. Still a fair bit of towers on the map, and something to note is more often than not, the Oni Warriors were going into this portion of the game at a small deficit. This is the biggest it has been, though, a solid 7K in the lead for the Tartarus Titans, and now they also don't have a late and early game composition. They have 2 ADCs with Paul, this Uller, and Cyclone on this Oleron, so they have a fair bit of late game damage and just shred for these objectives. So I'm not surprised to see the fact that they are leading going into this, and now you have to play around Cyclone Spin. You have to wait for the Sanctified Field to go down and try and outplay it. Currently, that hasn't been able to happen. He's pretty much just been free casting once that ult goes down, and now he's going to get a chance to do it again. It looks like the tier 1 will go for free, and I imagine the tier 2 as well, given the fact that there are 3 Warriors on the right side of the map.
Cyclone will take out the tier 1 tower. The rest of the team of the Titans will take out the tier 2. Could see our first maybe 5v5 around a Phoenix at the very least here. But without a minion wave, Tartarus Titans will be a little bit slow to take out that tower. Paul and Aurora already here. With the minion wave pushing up, I thought maybe the Titans would want to try and start a fight here, but no, they'll instead take the safer option, maybe take away all towers on the map before committing to another Phoenix.
Yeah, Paul has the Heartseeker online as well, so he's just going to look for a hail of arrows to start the fight at any point, try and find some sort of poke. And then that's really just the go button. If you hit it onto a carry, they're taking a solid 40% of their HP just off the rip. And there's some outplay to try and juke it, but besides that, it's pretty much free if you can place it properly. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we see right now, though. There is already a right Phoenix down. All the towers on the map are completed, and Tartarus Titans have a fair bit of gold to go spend. They're probably trying to take over to level 20 as well. Cyclone and SOT already there, but Layers, Paul, still trying to take over so they can upgrade those starter items. The Bluestone Brooch would go a long way here in these team fights, as well as the fact that Seer or Eye of the Jungle not going to help you so much on the Phoenix Siege, but maybe the fight after the fact.
22 minutes in, the Titans have a 10,000 plus gold lead pushing in to this next fight. As you said, Heartseeker already done by Paul. Meanwhile, Dart is still trying to finish that Obsidian Shard on his side to get some of that percent pen online to his name. There is a Witchblade picked up by Neilma, who has been at the front line of most of these team fights to try and slow down this double auto attacker comp that's come out here. But Nika doesn't have any team fight relics necessarily to his name here. No way to slow that down. Instead, it's that heroic teleport and the blink. It'll help him get to that back line, but it doesn't really feel like he has the tools to stay alive in those backline fights.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely hard. You don't even have any sort of beads. You've got sprint, so trying to juke around as much as possible will help a little bit. And it looks like Vote has finally got that Deathbringer, trying to match some of the crit pressure he's had all game. Cubo, though, could be in some trouble.
Double dash in by Layers. Cubo gets pulled in by the sweep down to a quarter HP. The stun has to be beads down. The drop kick doesn't find anything. It's only him going down. The River's Rebuke will lock 2 in place, but Layers will heal himself and SOT up. And SOT and Layers go right back in. Paul is here. The Axe Toss finds Neil, but the Riptide allows Neil to get the distance to get away from the follow-up damage after left side or right side. Phoenix has respawned and has immediately gone back down.
Yeah, Paul hits a nice axe there, but this will be the retreat because Fire Giant, that buff wore off a while ago, and it's about to spawn in again. So the Tartarus Titans feeling a little bit aggressive, wanted to get that Phoenix off the respawn, and now they're going to be able to pull this Fire Giant. Looks like Paul is sitting around the corner, though, just in case, trying to find an axe toss when anyone is able to walk in. But I can't imagine the Oni Warriors are even to forge any sort of defense here. They're too far away. They have to clear minions, and the lead is pretty monumental at the moment. It looks like 4 strong. They may walk up, but Aurora's already looking.
Cyclone has that Telkines and Nimble Rod and Tahuti. That's a lot of attack speed and a lot of extra damage. This Fire Giant stood absolutely no chance against the Tartarus Titans. Neilma, Shadow Lock down by Aurora, Axe Toss by Paul, and Neil will just use his time to run away and buy as much time for his team as he can, as 3 members of the Titans will chase him down to find a kill. SOT finds an hold on to only one. Aurora doesn't find the Shadow Lock, and Cubo Fred off to the side of the jungle will not be able to find a path back into this fight.
Yeah, it looks like the Tartarus Titans are going for the end here. They're not even going to posture up. Now they'll make the rotation over towards the Phoenix. I was going to say, you guys are just going to run in. Don't even care about the 2 Phoenixes still standing. They have the lead that they would be able to do that, but right now, double ADC comp. These Phoenixes won't really stand a chance. Cubo is still sort of lurking behind, trying to find an engage.
He's got to find a way in here now. He has the blink available. He can get to this backline. He's got to get there fast because the Titan is exposed, and Cubo is still nowhere to be seen. Argus is batting away at basically nothing. He gets melted the instant that he's dropped down into the fight. Cubo finally behind the team here at the Phoenix, but he gets axe tossed by Paul and dropped down to a quarter health and then dropped by Layers right afterwards. Vote goes in with the airstrike and will have to dash his way right back on out. Nika takes the axe toss for his Hunter, and the River's Rebuke will at least hold the Titans back for only a moment's notice. Nika very low in the back line. The Sanctified Field was still up that entire time. Dart is pulled back in by Layers, pulled back into the grave. Neil doesn't get to go anywhere. It's a double kill for Layers. Vote and Nika, the last 2 alive on the Warriors to hold this one back, but they will not be able to do so. Vote is getting shredded in the back line by SOT. Nika finds 4 with the knockup, but that'll be the last thing that he gets to do in this game. The Tartarus Titans take game number 3.
That double ADC comp came online, and it came online very hard. They just had too much damage in the later stages of the game. SOT and Layers both had 6 kills to their name, so the Warriors were playing very effectively. Not the Oni Warriors, the actual Warriors. Those Warriors on the map were playing very effectively, able to use their tank stats. And then Aurora, also so tanky on this Nox. The mitigation build that he was able to do set up so much. I mean, once we got to the late stage of the game and I saw what Cyclone could do on this pick, I was like, who is stopping this Oleron? This game, the answer was no one.
Yeah, I mean, that Sanctified Field just came up clutch in so many of these team fights here. Maybe we'll see if something is paid attention to towards that Oleron. Game number 3 is done. That one goes to the Titans. That means we go to game 4. That's coming up right after this. Titans make sure to keep things interesting for us. Game number 3 goes their way. And this one, Mifflin, the Warriors kick things off. Pretty good control for a majority of the early game, right? And then, well, then things start to go wrong, and they go wrong pretty dramatically for them. A couple of fights, specifically like around the red buff, that end up standing out. And the Titans, they get to come on top, not just of the fights, but of the game because of them.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to a lot of just different ideology in the draft from the Tartarus Titans. This was a Titans draft from like 3 months ago where they were very willing to, well, barring the Nox, which is essentially just a brand new look for Aurora. But Paul now on this Uhl was allowed to get involved at every portion of the game. SOT on a standard warrior that has great initiation potential with dazzling offensive. The Tartarus Titans just got back down to their standard style of play. I really, really enjoyed watching Cyclone Spin on this Ola I had concerns initially in the desk that maybe the Ola would struggle against the dive potential of the Oni Warriors, but Cubo Fred was handled by Paul before he was allowed to even think about walking up on this Ola just about every single time. The axe stuns were good, the shadow locks were finding their way home, and the Tartarus Titans grouped up as 5, and essentially if you look at their positioning in some of these team fights, they didn't have a front line and a back line. There was one line, and it was all headed one way, a spearhead composition that tore through the Oni Warriors.
Just like a Hydra, right? They've got 5 heads, and they're ready to rip you apart, and it tends to work out pretty well. We should, maybe, you know what? That's a good branding. We need a Hydra somewhere. I don't think we can change any of these teams because they are kind of locked in forever.
The Hylian Hydras.
Oh yeah, a little bit of a Hydra somewhere wouldn't be that bad. And it would have to go to a team that plays like a 5-headed beast, the way the Titans did that game. 6-2-11 there for Layers, 6-1-10 for SOT. So both of them making sure to have some very large, impactful games. 4-1-12 though for Paul, and of course the duo lane providing a ton in terms of support for the rest of the squad when they get those kills. It's hard to overlook the 22.6. Let's round it up, 22.7K. That Paul was able to do there. It just feels like a lot of impact, and you can see it, 5,000 damage difference primarily in just the jungle. And so, maybe not as big an impact specifically from the Gilgamesh as maybe we would have expected in the past. And the Shiva got off to a great start that's similar to exactly what you were saying, exactly what Layers would have wanted. And now it'll be the question of, can they keep that up, or will the Warriors adjust their draft? Last time we were a little surprised, not just because of some of the picks and bans, but specifically the Titans getting rid of the E-set. And they were first pick that time around. This time it will be the Warriors taking first pick once again. And the question is whether or not they let that E-set through. And I guess from their position, they beat it twice when the Titans had it, so they don't necessarily have to worry about it as much.
Or they could just take it for themselves if they so choose and try and adapt that playstyle towards objectives and allow it to go to mid or even have it flex back into support. I think that E-set support's still very strong, even in spite of the fact that we haven't had too many opportunities to see it at the competitive level of play recently. The Tartarus Titans in second pick, though, will probably just ban E-set. If they were banning it in first pick when they didn't want it, they'll probably do it yet again. A lot of respect over towards that god. So, adaptations, I think, going to be the name of the game here in Game 4 of this series. I'm expecting the Oni Warriors to not look towards Hera. That's my blanket statement. that Hera was not allowed to play.
And you know what? I say uncowardly to play it. I think is maybe the consensus we can come to. I'm just kind of uncowardly.
Yeah, brave.
Yeah, I get. Well, I don't know. Brave insinuates something different. Like uncowardly, like you could be neutral and not like you're not cowardly then, but being brave is inherently opposite. You know?
I see what you're saying.
I was going to ask you about the
He was just doing him.
Yeah, he was just doing him. And unfortunately, didn't work out very well that time around. I was going to ask you about the Daji because it was something that in Game 1 of this set, a long time ago, feels like, Daji was the first pick for the Warriors. And it was the last time they were first pick. And it was also the last time they got the Daji this set. It is banned since then. 100% win rate on that god. And I was hoping to try and thread some sort of world where maybe the Titans let it through and what would happen. But we don't live in that world. They don't want to deal with it, so they get rid of it. Shiva and Khepri banned out by the Warriors, and the E-set, as you kind of highlight, does get taken away there by the Titans. And then it comes down to top picks.
Elegant.
Yeah.
Guess Emoja.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Emoja with the Oni Warriors dedicating one of their bans to the what I would consider one of the other top-tier supports, Khepri, you got to think that they want to take what is left, and Yemoja has been dominant across the board. I feel like she's just so strong in that laning phase, brings so much healing utility to the team fight phase as well, essentially forces the Tartarus Titans, at least one of them, likely to pick up a Phantom Shell, and anytime a god forces you to think about your relics differently, that just speaks volumes to the power that Yemoja brings to a draft. And you're not revealing anything. Taking a support for yourself, taking a god like Yemoja, just giving you additional mobility, giving you all that healing, giving you some walls to spawn up, is going to fit into the majority of compositions regardless. You do not need to build a draft around this pick. So the Tartarus Titans essentially don't glean any information from this Yemoja lock-in, except for the fact that they get to play against her.
Illuminate this battlefield.
So something that,
sun
well,
to
admittedly,
vanquish the
sometimes can be very
evil.
difficult. They do go back to the Ola run, and this time they lock in something that has been, at the best of times, one of the most oppressive picks I think you can have in Smite. Amaterasu, when she is meta, and when she has that power, ruins games for people sometimes around. The Warriors should know that firsthand. They were capable of doing so, at least 3 of them, when they were playing as SSG a few years ago. Something that Nika for a long time had a 100% win rate on Season 7.
And he hated playing it. I
And
remember that.
he did. He was like, yeah, I don't really want to, but if she's up, I have to.
And I do be winning.
And they did be winning. And now it's going over, presumably to
Here
Sot
it is.
alongside the Ola run, and now with a Kabrakan on the other side.
Yeah, I like this a lot. So Yemoja already spawning up the walls with River's Rebuke is going to make it pretty difficult for Olarun to operate. Amaterasu similarly doesn't really have any tools to deal with that. And now Kabrakan as well, being able to spawn up those structures and dive in towards the Olarun and the Amaterasu. Very strong. Even just as a disengage tool, we might see Kabrakan dedicate that ultimate just to stop a dazzling offensive, which is a pretty cool matchup. Bit of matchup knowledge that we might get to see in some of these late game team fights. Generally, Amaterasu will try her best to ignore Kabrakan, and he can just spawn up a U and make sure that his own backline is able to escape some of these engagements. That said, the Tartarus Titans, they found something that worked, and they stuck with it. Olarun and Amaterasu yet again. Strong backline presence, has high potential to snowball, and the Oni Warriors, they're getting back to their style of play, which is, hey, don't line up against us at the 25-minute mark. Don't meet us at an even state 30 minutes into this game once we are all 5-stacked, because this composition that the Warriors have got them for themselves is just gnarly in the team fight. But small counter matchup now with Nemesis locked in means that Cthulhu will have to think twice when descending into madness.
The bans that round things out. The Zamus and Cobb has been banned a whole ton for something that we haven't gotten to see. Granted, it was in the top 3 the last couple of games. Not locked in here for the Warriors. Does make it to the bottom 2 bans for the Titans. Double Hunter on the side of the Warriors. They've got a Guardian, and check it, a Guardian alongside 2 Hunters. So very tanky front line, very damagey back line up against the Ama, who, you tell me if you've heard this before, but likes to dive pretty deep. You already mentioned some counterplay in her. Olarun, Sanctified Fields, just good.
Not
The
against Cthulhu,
Atlas,
though.
not as much against Cthulhu. No, you're right. And then the Atlas and the Nemesis, they get locked in. And the Atlas is interesting because this is one that a few weeks ago, Aurora was like, yeah, I like playing Atlas. Like, it wasn't, he didn't get too deep into it. He was just like, yeah, I enjoy it.
And you know what? I think that Atlas has got some inherent synergies with this Titans draft. You've got a whole lot of single target damage, and you've got a whole lot of lockdown and displacement with Atlas. Similarly, if you're picking up one guy, Nemesis might just shred all their defense. You just start a fight with a number advantage. So, interested in that. Atlas only allowed to leverage that aggressive style of play, though, when he's either at least even, but preferably ahead, because he really does have to put himself very, very far into the backline, has to get very, very close to the Oni Warriors to apply the best version of his CC. So excited to see how this one pans out. Small counter matchups. Again, Cthulhu's ultimate Descent into Madness essentially allows him to ignore Sanctified Fields, can't dilate his time. He's operating on a different level. But similarly, Nemesis, with her ultimate, is the reverse card. Okay, well, you're Descended into Madness inside my Sanctified Field. That means that you are in the field. Nobody's coming in to help you because nobody wants their own time dilated. And also your defense has been shred. So the Tartarus Titans, small wins here or there, means that in late game team fights, if it does go late, I'm still favoring the Warriors just by nature of their composition. But that will mean, and it's by the nature of the high execution draft that the Tartarus Titans have been going towards time and time again so far this set, this Olarun and this Nemesis need to coordinate their ultimates.
Well, we'll see whether or not they can coordinate the ultimates the way they need to, or if we'll make it to another late game win for the Oni Warriors. It's game number 4 between these two Titans.
Can they make it to game number 5 here for the Tartarus Titans? That's their question. Or can the Warriors shut them down here in game number 4? It's J-Mac, Trelly, and Doug one more time. And the Oni Warriors said, hey, that double hunter composition worked real well for you guys last time. Mind if we draft one of our own? See Dardes on the Chernobog mid here, Trelly.
Yeah, Chernobog not going to be the best mid pressure, especially into an Uller, but Cubo's on Cabrakan, so I imagine they will be not too afraid to get aggressive in the early stages of the game. There's just a lot of CC that Paul can have to just say, like, no. Like, you know, it's all, if you're sitting in axe stance, even if Cubo pre-ones the blink, it's going to be very hard to get any sort of aggression onto Uller. Layers, however, is going to have not a fun matchup in the Cubo. I imagine if they ever find each other in the jungle, Cubo's just going to stun him out of the shield and try to be as much of a bully as possible. They've diversified their damage so much with triple Guardian and double ADC. You really can't safely itemize, but still, Chernobog's clear in the early stages of the game, not going to be the best. I imagine Dardes is going to get poked out a fair bit in the lane, at least for right now.
Good call there by Boat to grab that agility, because Aurora was a split second away from pulling him in with that gravity pull right after. Damage in this duo lane, the double Guardians out clearing the Warrior and the Assassin. Even Dardes getting a slight bit of poke advantage over here against Paul in this mid lane. The double Hunter mids versus the Magical Hunter, Physical Hunter on the opposite side here in towards the duo lane. Bluestone pinning out of Paul, probably no surprise though, gets him a lot of extra clear. But Dardes going for the Death Toll, a little bit different than what we've seen from the normal Hunters.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And SOT went for tier 1 Berserker Shield. Like, you're definitely up against 2 Guardians, and he didn't even care. Like, he could have so easily went Shoguns or anything like that. There was no physicals that could possibly been across from him at any point. He was still like, Berserker Shield's better. I don't even care. I'm not going to go for it. So has some physical defense, not going to help out in this matchup. And maybe if he decides to tank up some towers or something, he'll get a little bit of use out of that. But Dardes isn't going to be clearing the way with abilities or anything like that. Stacking Dev Gauntlets in mid, also not going to be your best option. You come online very late. Transcendence, though, going to help you out. And as long as you have the Death Toll, your sustain isn't going to be too bad. So I kind of like the way Dardes is itemized here. Recognizing, again, you're not going to want to trade auto attacks with Uller too much until you get your build online.
We do see an emblem picked up by Aurora, the horrific emblem for a first relic. And on the opposite side, Neil Ma has picked up a sprint, maybe recognizing that there's a lot of slows on the opposite side, SOT, Layers, Aurora also namely, and even Cyclone Spin once he can get that Sanctified Field. So Neil Ma maybe going to try and counteract some of those slows, at least out here for the side of the Oni Warriors. The pressure onto Dardes yet again, a red buff invade now by the Titans could lead to a fight, but it's going to be a 2 versus 3 fight. Dardes secures his red buff, Layers does get the dash to get away, and Aurora will give him some extra movement speed with that kinetic charge, and that's enough for the Titans to get out. They don't get the buff, but at least they don't die.
Yeah, I think they didn't have to overstep there. They realized, hey, maybe we don't try to go for this one. Paul, though, is getting walked up on. They have a fair bit of damage. The blink is good.
Blink's done on top. Paul doesn't have the leap to get away, but Dardes has the autos to close the distance, and the Oni Warriors find a first blood on Paul up at the red buff.
Yeah, it seemed like Paul must have jumped onto the red buff, right? That's the only real way he dies there is if he doesn't have that leap available. And if you're trying to do the blue, or the red buff rather, as quickly as possible, Cubo Fred, he doesn't want anything to do with that. Dardes will get the last hit though, so an extra kill to your mid laner. That is going to help out here. You want that gold and trying to go towards that Transcendence before the Uller. If you can stack it online a little bit earlier, it's going to help you out in that lane. So it looks like Dardes will use that just to get the charged Morningstar for now. Probably going to have a little bit of pressure in the lane if you get that stacked a little bit earlier.
Nika losing out on the trade pressure from SOT now that they've been left alone in that solo lane. And Nika will go back to base. Not yet, though. I thought for a moment he would, but instead he canceled his back. Does have that teleport up for both of the solo laners, so they can get right back into the action at a moment's notice. SOT will now take his first trip back. I say that every time I look at the solo lane and go, all right, cool, one is back, and the other one stops them from backing and really just delays this more than anything.
Well, they're trying to be annoying. They both have teleports, so it doesn't really matter. Neither of them have backed, and they both want to try and finish these items. It looks like trying to get a little bit aggressive is the Tartarus Titans, but I can't imagine Cyclones dropping the Sanctified Fields at all when Vote has ult. Neil could be looked at here, but he also has the Rivers now, so that's going to delay any sort of fighting that we see just yet.
Yeah,
We do see the fight over the Serpent Camp there. Layers does have Blink, but won't use it. Up against Cubo Fred, that first ability would make it a little bit harder to lock down Cubo with this Nemesis. Meanwhile, now the Titans with a little bit of pressure in this dual lane, they'll finally step up towards the wave. Another red buff invade attempt by Layers, I'd say that, but he mostly just peeked around the corner, saw what was happening, and said, all right, there's two. I'm not going to be a part of this at all. So Tartarus will once again get his red buff. It looks like both of them are going towards that Transcendent start here in the mid.
Yeah, there was a small win in the duo lane. Neilma had to use that sprint, that heavenly sprint, to get out of danger, but Horrific Emblem was not used. So now Aurora can try to lock down the duo lane without any sort of sprint to get out of that slow if they find some aggression. It looks like Vote probably not going to be stepping up too much this game. If you get the first blood on Jingwei, you know, you get a kill online, you can be aggressive, but if not, probably just sitting back is going to be a little bit easier. Still no Transcendence finish for the mid laners either. Dardes and Paul sitting on that charged Morningstar. I imagine once Paul backs, he'll be able to get started. So both of them will back here, probably matching that build so they get it stacked at about the same time. And support builds pretty much mirrored as well. The Gauntlet of Thebes are also being finished here. The only real leverage you have right now is the fact that SOT went Berserker Shield, so has no form of defense against this Cthulhu.
You see Aurora just being annoying. SOT using the ult against the double Guardian. Cubo does get stunned down and shredded through by a lot of damage from Layers, but the turnaround stunned the wall in, and now that Dardes has made the rotation in, Layers is in danger. He gets knocked up by the Cthulhu and taken down by Dardes. Nika finds a big assist in that pickup against the jungler. Tartarus Titans down now 2-0.
Yeah, but it looks like Paul is getting aggressive here in the back half. Neil taking a lot of damage, and he's going to be so close to dying, but not enough. The Riptide will get him just out of danger. Not enough damage from Aurora's ultimate there, so trying to match some of the aggression. You can't follow Chernobog. I mean, it's just too quick of a global presence. So Paul said, if I can't help out in right, I'm going to try to help out in left. Unfortunate, though, not able to find that one. So Dardes now 2-0, has some solid gold in hand, and stacking up that Transcendence nicely. This Chernobog is going to be a force as this game continues.
Well, we do see the Obelisk steal there by Aurora and Cyclone teaming up. Vote will walk forward and will eat some damage from that Astrolabe toss out there by Aurora. And Aurora's just been more of a nuisance on this pick than anything. Using that Astrolabe with the Gravity Pull combo just to kind of harass Neil more than anything else. Has set up for that first Scepter to go the way of the Titans. And even despite the fact that they're down 2-0, they're the ones with a very, very small lead in gold. Basically minuscule at this point. But XP, about 600-700 up for them.
No, that's 7 gold. Ah, it's 31. Now, I was going to say that 7 gold is going to be massive somewhere in this game.
Still waiting to see a 3 gold lead. I've seen a 1, a 2, and a 4. I need a 3 now.
All right, well, we'll keep our eyes open on the bingo sheet, ready to check that one off. But it looks like Layers and SOT sitting over here at this blue buff. Nika probably hears the shield now and recognizes what's happening, but too little, too late. That one is going to be gone. It looks like Cubo and Dardes are trying to make the rotation over with some potty blocks from Nika.
Yeah, no ultimate from Dardes means that there's no further follow-up here for the Warriors. They'll just end up losing out a blue buff for Nika, who does have that Jade Emperor's Crown online now, dealing with that triple physical that will come out from Paul as well once he starts joining the fray there. So making sure to have that defense there. You imagine Witchblade probably also the call. I mean, that seems to have been kind of the more typical item to go here for these solo lane Cthulhus.
Yeah, especially when so many ADCs are on the map at the moment. You want to slow the attack speed of the Olron, of the Uller, and especially your lane opposition, the Amaterasu. Neil zooming across the map
Gotta
right
go
now.
fast?
Yeah, he popped that sprint. I don't know where he was trying to sprint to, but once again, the Horrific Emblem is still up for Aurora, and the Heavenly Sprint will be used by Neilma, so there is a little bit of outplay there if you do want to try and slow the opposition, but I have to imagine it was either he thought there was some aggression coming or it was a misclick. Either way, Neil no longer has that tool available. Cubo, though, found Cyclone Spin.
Cyclone gets stunned twice, and the Tremor moving so slow, and Cyclone moving so fast, he actually jukes out Vote. But Vote, Dardes over the wall, needs one hit. They just, one ability, something's got to hit him. Finally, Dardes will land. It takes him a couple autos to weave in there between the minions. The only Warriors find their third pick of the game.
Yeah, that's the first time I've gotten to see the real slow-motion Chernobog dash just slowly creeping forward. It was enough, though, to make sure Cyclone Spin goes down and loses the beads and ult in the process. It looked like SOT made the rotation over just in case a gold fairy pull would happen, but decided to teleport on the way back, so not going to see that aggression just yet. Oni Warriors sitting at a solid 3-0. We've already mentioned this, though, the gold lead pretty much not there.
Dardes picked up. Thrown by Aurora, but mostly just damage to him. But good lord, that's half of Dardes' health, and add a little bit more there. Paul adding insult to injury by hitting with a volley
right out from the top there. But no further follow-up out of Paul. He's very low on mana right now, even despite having that transcendence to his name here. And Neil, with enough healing into the kit, will make sure that Tartarus can get topped off and nice and healthy. But again, another 2v2 over by this blue buff. SOT did dash in, but Nika is very low on this Cthulhu ultimate by SOT. Will stun out Cubo Fred, surrounded by two and put in the dirt. Layers will finally manage to grab a kill for the Titans here in Game 4.
Cubo was just trying to be a good jungler, man. He foregoed his speed buff, walked right past it, walked past his backs, and said, I'm going to this blue. I want to make sure that Nika gets this blue buff. Does not get it and dies for it. So unfortunate for Cubo, will not be getting much farm at all. And now we're seeing a level lead in the jungle. Layers is 10 to Cubo's 9. He's going to spend a little bit more time dead trying to figure out where to get a little bit of extra farm. Does have the Divine Ruin, probably building into a breastplate, but Tartarus Titans, they're building into the Pyromancer.
Pyromancer should go down pretty easily here. Nika very late on the rotation back in to try and stop that one. Meanwhile, Cyclone caught out, doesn't have Sanctified Field, doesn't have beads, and doesn't have a health bar any longer. A vote finally puts him down for the second time now this game. The Oni Warriors managed to find a pick on Cyclone.
Yeah, not going to be able to pull that Gold Fury just yet. Atlas is here, and he's got a lot of disruption. We've seen the Atlas objective steals as well. Cubo, though, is going to get very aggressive onto Paul, but the axe and the jump away might just get him out.
Oh, Riptide pulls Paul back, but one pickup by Aurora will grab Cubo, though he gets stunned out. Cubo's still fine. Gamma Ray burst on the floor, and Layers will find the dash to get back out. Not enough damage onto Cubo to take him down instead. And now it might be Aurora going down. A good wall out of Cubo will lock him in place for Tartarus to find the kill. But SOT has come back to the fight, and he'll at least make it a 1-for-1.
Yeah, a nice clean up there with the dazzling offensive. Nika tried to chase as far as possible to clean that one up, but not going to be able to find any sort of kill. Can't help out with the peel, and now SOT has 2 levels over the solo laner. So right now, sitting pretty is Amaterasu. Has the Horrific Emblem as well, so double Horrific Emblem on the Tartarus Titans. They're really trying to make use out of the slows of this relic and the damage mitigation. And plus, we've already mentioned this, there's a lot of ADCs on the opposite side. That's also going to start to add up that attack speed slow. So it's going to be difficult to deal with as the later stages of the game. But that's only their second kill. The Tartarus Titans, despite being down 2-5, still have that gold lead.
You think SOT goes the gross route and picks up a crossbound on this Ama? We see it on the Bellona.
Oh, yeah.
Very often. You think he does it here with the Ama too?
For sure. It's got to be next item.
We'll see if that gets picked up here. A lot of brawling in the mid lane under that tier 1 tower. I won't get much of anything except some HP off of Dardas. Paul, though, consistently sitting around like half mana. He is spamming his abilities non-stop on this Uller, and with all right to do so, he's got 30% CDR in the build. Aurora will be able to walk away. Thought maybe we'd see an ult there at a Cubo. Try and get some lockdown, maybe force a relic out, but nothing to be had there in the mid lane.
Dardes did end up going for the Atalanta's bow, so not really itemizing into that Silver Branch, just trying to get some crit. It's just a pretty loaded item. Even though it took some nerfs, Atalanta's bow still gives you a bunch of stats that pretty much any ADC would want, with the attack speed, the lifesteal, and the crit chance. And then once you get a kill, you can get some movement speed. That's always going to help out a little bit there. So pretty loaded item with the Transcendence and 4-0 stat line. I think Dardes will make pretty good use out of that one.
I didn't realize that it was Dardas who had 4 of the 5 kills for his team. Wow. What a startup that Dardas has been able to have in this game for the Warriors. Tartarus Titans, though, still leading in the gold department, at least to say here. 1,700 up for the Chaos side team. Experience, though. Nearly 5,000 up for the Tartarus Titans. I mean, we see it over in the solo lane mostly. SOT with a 2.5 level lead over Nika, who just now was able to go back to base and pick up his second relic and then get himself back into that lane. It will be the Witchblade, so he will be able to slow down some of the attack speed coming out of this Oni, or coming out of the Titans draft. And a Sanctified Field from Cyclone Spin. A lot of damage onto Neil Ma. He'll drop the River's Rebuke and use that sprint to get on out of there. Vote gets picked up. Doesn't have that agility to get out, but Vote is standing his ground up against these 3.
That was a beautiful placement of the River's Rebuke, pretty much stopping all that aggression. And we talk about the cooldown of River's Rebuke, but the cooldown of Sanctified Fields is up there as well. So it's going to be quite some time for either of those ultimates to be on. The Oni Warriors recognize that immediately, and they start pulling this gold free, but SOT is here.
SOT caged out, used the ultimate to try and stop some of the damage, but instead he'll be blasted by Vote with the airstrike instead. Aurora gets some good damage with the Gamma Ray Burst. Paul in the back line, very low. as he's being chased out by Tartarus. No mana left on the Zuler. Tartarus will find the Rampage. Tartarus will find that kill, and maybe another one as Aurora goes down. It's a double for the mid laner of the Oni Warriors, and Layers and Cyclone cannot find a path back in.
Tartarus has been able to find so many kills here using this ultimate to get to the back line. 6-0 right now currently. This Gold Fury is going to be a small prize at the point where they're able to take down 3 members of the Tartarus Titans. Pyromancer's not up right now, so there's no easy answer back. Right now, the Oni Warriors are even able to get this Tier 1 tower. They have so much pressure. They don't even need all 5 at this Gold Fury right now. Splitting their presence, trying to invade some camps right now, going to get those mids, and probably setting up at least some vision because Pyromancer will be up shortly as well.
And it's so odd to see the Titans do something like this here in game number 4. Talking about going for a very similar draft they did in a previous game. This happened with the Warriors up against, it was the Camelot Kings. So the Kings went with this like Athena draft. It was this full dive on the one person, go for these big kills. We saw the Warriors make a comeback in that set where they were down like 12,000 gold, find the win. And the Kings decided to run the exact same style of composition again at them. And the Warriors were able to adapt to it from game 1 into game 2, absolutely crush. So to me, it's a little mind-boggling that the Titans would go for that same style of thing again against a team that is good at adapting to things between games.
Yeah, they were obviously pretty confident they would be able to get to late game. At the moment, sitting 0-2 are the carries of the Tartarus Titans. Both Paul and Cyclone Spin not quite having their itemization online just yet. Tier 2 Titan's Bane still going to give you a fair amount of benefit, but not as much as Tartarus, who has that Silver Branch Bow. On the flip side, Cyclone Spin, Tier 2 in a Telekines, but Vote already has that Silver Branch Bow as well, so pretty massive power spikes on the left side of the map for the Oni Warriors. They're able to use this on the Pyromancer that's spawning in currently, but still no look at the FG just yet. It's still pretty early on, 15 minutes in. If you're the Tartarus Titans, you still have some avenues to farm up. The gold lead is by no means extravagant. It's pretty run-of-the-mill, about 1,000 at the moment, so not going to be too out of the woods yet, only like 1.2k, so not a big deal at all. They still have room to get these late-game hunters online. Just need a team fight a little bit better, stop spreading out so much. They have the tools with the Atlas ult and layers to make sure to shred these protections. They're able to get to that portion.
I mean, if the Titans can find one good sanctified field like we saw in game number 3 out of Cyclone Spin, that can turn a fight instantly on its head. Only Nika will really not have to worry about that ultimate in particular. He'll be able to walk through that one at full speed. Cubo Fred inside the jungle will actually lose out on those camps. Paul with that ward over the top is able to steal that one away. Nice little pick there by Paul to at least get some XP away from the jungler of the Oni Warriors, who is down about a level. Nika still down 11.5 in the solo lane. And then Neilma still waiting to hit that level 12 point. Meanwhile, for Aurora, has hit 12, just hasn't gone back to base yet to get that second relic.
Yeah, you really get to see the XP. I mean, because right now, obviously, Tartarus has a fair bit and Vote has a fair bit. But besides that, Nika just ticked over to 16, where SOT's been 17 for a minute, as well as only level 14 is Cubo Fred to layer 16. So they still have a few different avenues to try to abuse here. I think the biggest one is the fact that Neilma is only level 11, doesn't have that second relic, just the sprint available, whereas Aurora is able to get that second relic, and he just picked up, well, first of all, Cyclone Spin got the Phantom Shell, and Aurora, of course, got his Bracer. So trying to avoid some of these rivers, probably a smart option here. Doesn't have any sort of burst protection, but look at what he's up against. It's really just Cubo with burst. Everything else, pretty sustained damage and auto attacks.
You think Aurora was sitting there going, Cyclone, please, man, can you get this Phantom? I've got to get my
Yeah,
Bracer
I want
back
Bracer
online.
so bad.
I've got to have my Bracer, man. Somebody else has got to pick it up. You're the safest option here. But a tier 1 tower goes down on the left side of the map. We did have a group up on the right over by Pyro, but nothing to come of that one. So Vote, quote-unquote, one lane by getting that first tower down, but means a little bit less over there on that dual lane side. Cubo walking through the enemy jungle by himself, does find a stun against Layers, and he'll have Neil there as backup for once he turns around that corner. But SOT now teleporting over to this tier 2 on the left side of the map. Maybe for a second was thinking there that there was going to be something for the objective, but that Fury is still down for another minute.
Yeah, Oni Fury's got about a minute 10, give or take. The Pyromancer has been up for quite some time, but neither one of these teams feeling confident enough to pull it just yet. probably wanting to set up more so, again, for this Oni Fury. That's going to be a lot bigger of a team fight tool. Once those Oni minions start pushing in, you can look for pressure all over the map and just use the gold however you see fit. So right now, not going to be the option. Obviously, Layers did use the ultimate there, and Cubo pretty much just said, you know I've got slow immunity in the kit, right? Turned around, stunned, and ran away just fine. Finishing up the Void Stone, Cubo is going to go for more so of a hybrid build on this Cabrakan. Not the blink, one-shot, Polynomicon sort of burst Cabrakan, more so the sustained damage, and I'm going to lock down the enemies, because again, double ADC. Cubo doesn't have to do that much damage. He has Nika and Neil to help him out with the magical portion, and once these ADCs are just shredding through everything, you really just have to be a CC bot and lock down the carries of the Tartarus Titans.
Still waiting to see what Dardas goes after the Silver Branch Bow. With that Atalanta's and the Transcendence, a decent amount of power. Some good pen in the build as well there, as well as a little bit of lifesteal and crit. And then that Death's Toll to give him just a little bit of small sustain that'll come his way here. But Neil does hit 12, he does go back to base, and he picks up a Frenzy for himself. So, gonna get a little bit of extra damage on the side of his team. Actually ended up skipping that Tier 1 Adventurer's Blade, picked it up, and then opted to go in towards this Enchanted Kasari instead. Oni Hunter's Garb could be in the question here. Still, also Shogun's Kasari could be the call since you do have that double Hunter.
Yeah, it seemed like he probably wanted either Wingblade or Witchblade, and then was like, wait, Nika got Pestilence and Voidstone. He's not going to get this Shogun. We have double ADC. Someone's got to get that Shogun. So Neil gets to delay his items just a little bit, and will have to go for that. But Vote just finished that Ornate Arrow, so gonna give... Oh, wait, he sold it and went for Diamond Arrow. He didn't know which one he wanted. Now he knows. I was going to say he's going to get a lot of crit. Now he's just going to get a lot of auto attack damage, and that's going to help out a ton, at least for your late game shred, because right now, Silver Branch, Odibo, Kin Size. That's the object of the game, trying to shred that HP as quickly as possible, but the Oni Fury is getting shred down now.
Oni Fury down to a quarter HP. Aurora picks up 2, or at least pulls back 2. SOT finds a stun onto nobody there. Neil Mott will be fine, but Neil Mott is losing a lot of HP. The Gamma Burst goes through, but will not find the kill. The Oni Fury still being picked up here. The Titans, though, do manage to steal that one away from the Oni Warriors, but can they find the fight after, or can they at least find the path on out of here? Layers use the beats to get away from the initial knockup. Dardas goes back in, and it's shredding through Paul and SOT. Cubo grabs one, Paul grabs down Paul, but Aurora will fall down, or will get the kill up on Devote, I should say. SOT does get out of there, but now it's Aurora surrounded by 4. You got the objective, but at what cost, Tartarus Titans? 3 and a double for Dardas.
You gotta make sure Aurora goes down, but SOT teleports in once again to way too many. The body blocks are good, and he's gonna fall. That's the second time he's teleported into like 4, right? I'm not making that up.
No, he did it earlier.
That's what I'm saying. Last time I think he got out. This time around, not gonna be the case. And they don't stay for that tier 2 tower. There's one objective that they really want, and it's on the right side of the map. Layers is gonna get some camps on that side, maybe set up some vision, but very little steal potential right now for this Nemesis. Vote isn't here, but they have a second ADC. Dardas is doing arguably more damage right now, so not gonna be too worried about the shred on this one. And now it's all up to this lone Nemesis to try and steal this away. Layers is still sitting around, but I don't know if he's got this.
That's a lot to ask for here. With only one Hunter, the damage output's going to be a little bit slower on fire. That gives Cyclone and Paul time to get into this fight, or maybe not. Nika on zone duty with the Cthulhu, but there's a few different avenues to get this Fire Giant that's not going down fast. Now that Vote has rejoined the fray, they can finally be shredded away. Ultimate charged up by Roar, but fired a little bit too early to go for the steal. The Oni Warriors have turned this one around. They lose the Fury on the opposite side. Who cares about that, because they killed 4 after, and they get a Fire Giant and a Pyromancer to boot. The Oni Warriors have swung this game back towards themselves. It's about a 2K gold lead, and the XP evened out.
Yeah, Roar was able to steal away the Oni Fury. Not going to be able to steal away the Fire Giant. Close. Certainly close, but not enough damage built into the kit. Atlas ult from a distance has some potential, but not going to be able to outburst the damage they have. Oni Warriors, though, looks like Neil did finish up that Shoguns and going to get the Hasten Wing, so we aren't going to see any root sprints this game. More so just give your ADCs haste. That's going to be a pretty solid stat, especially when you have this double ADC composition. Cubo Fred already has it built into his one, but these Hunters, with the way they've itemized, they're going to be shredding through pretty much everything. It looks like Vote is going to go in for the dominance. So despite the fact that SOT and Aurora have the spectral armor, they're not even going to itemize it into any more crit. Vote just has the passive crit with his 2, and Dardes has the Atalanta's bow, but they're going for the more so this shred build, which is not really going to care too much about the spectral armor.
Yeah, it's not going to care too much on that there. Tier 2 tower started up by the Warriors, and with 2 Hunters and a Shogun's Kasari there, that one will go down swiftly to the boys in blue. Dash in by Nika to find some poke up against Paul. Pull by Aurora only grabs Neil, who will be able to heal himself and the team back up even after. So the CC from Aurora is now gone, but the minion wave a little bit slow for the Warriors to get in. Nika won't care about the minions, instead he'll go to the back line. The ult from Aurora is on the floor, but so is the River's Rebuke out of Neil Ma. That one will zone the Titans out. The Sanctified Field a little late in the fight. Cyclone is already out of it. Aurora and Paul are both low. Dardes is in the throne room, zoning them away from their own fountain. Dardes comes up with Divine in this game. 9 kills in a row and Undying on this Chernobog. The Oni Warriors, before they can take out the Titan, they've got to take down the Phoenix. They'll grab that, and it's now 3 versus 5 to defend against their own Titan. Can the Titans pull it off? Aurora does pick up 1, throws Cubo into the midst of the fountain, so Cubo is low, and Cubo will go down. Aurora credit to the kill, but the Titan is at a quarter HP. The Oni Warriors are so close to taking this one down, and they will do it in 4. Oni Warriors with a 3-1 win over the Tartarus Titans.
Double ADCs and double Odysseus bow procs in the Titan room were pretty much enough to shred that Titan down quickly. And I'm just going to say it, they had 2 jungles because Dardes was ulting to the back line, and he was essentially just going for the carries. He was not shredding tanks. He was ulting as far back as possible, and they're like, guys, there's a Chernobog back here. What do we do? Nothing. 9-0 on that Chernobog mid. Fantastic play out of Dardes. The whole team looked good, but man, he had no fear.
I mean, it shows the state of the game when Dardes is in the enemy Titan room, gatekeeping the fountain away from them here. Oni Warriors with a strong win here in game number 4. They'll be able to take the set. We'll take it to a quick break and come back to the desk right after.
touch on my feelings, dressing appearances. Feeling more solid about who the man in the mirror is. I reach for hearts through the speaker box to connect with strangers. Painting the page with the language, but off the mic I barely speak it all. I seldom see a flaw, bitch, I need it all. Shook by the way life is lately. I feel the earth pirouette, I'm dazed like I'm seeing stars. Got them all on the wave, it's more than just words to a page. Just feel like I'm hosting a read-along, and I speak in tongues. No translation, I'm out the bottle, I'm grieving, leaving the beat, needed CPR. I'm disconnected, I feel the pressure, I need acceptance. I'm from the crevice, where all my homies on something special. They subtle flexing, but still they hella selfish. Chasing a bag, but it's good, they don't need the Franklins to keep it 100. I'm seeing shit down the barrel, I named that gun right America. Armed with the inkjet, I'm flaring up in my element. We losing brothers to bullshit, we need protection, cause real niggas is
The Warriors are able to do it here in game number 4. A little bit of a stumble there, Miff, in game 3, but the same end result here that the Warriors were looking for. They find themselves the 3 wins, 3rd seed now out of this week and going into not just Masters, but also going into phase number 2. So a long-term dub for them. And this one is a lot more controlling. Just like I remember looking up at different moments, just like kind of like, okay, I see something's happening. What's the game state afterward? Oh, the Warriors are ahead. Cool. Couple minutes later, oh, what just happened? Oh, the Warriors are ahead. And it kind of just continued that way.
Yeah, once the Warriors establish their lead, they hold on to it for the entire duration of this game, man. And I think it really does come down to some of those counter matchups we were talking about during the P's and B's. This Cthulhu was allowed to do literally anything he wanted. Dardes taking the Chernobog into mid, making sure that Cyclone Spin got the Ula Run treatment that he deserved. Don't let that guy farm up for free. And he certainly wasn't quite able to, as long as Dardes was flying into his shadow on cooldown. Speaking of, Tartarus just has himself a phenomenal game, 12.5 KDA.
That's
hard
good.
to argue against.
Yeah, those are good numbers.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That thing you just said, I like that a lot if I'm a Warriors fan. It is always interesting to see. I think the Titans did a good job farm-wise keeping up, but you can see throughout the game just the kill count not going in your favor. And you know, there's always that conversation. Early game, if you're winning like 5-0 and it's 6, 7, 8 minutes in, if you've managed to turn that into a Gold Fury, good for you, and that's where your lead's coming from. But for the most part, the kills maybe don't offset as much. But when it's 12-3, then you know, even the 4K gold, all of a sudden you know you're at least consistently winning these. The global pressure and specifically the capabilities to dive the backline. How many times would you guess that you see a Chernobog this deep in the base while his team's still on the Phoenix? Not often. And so I think that was just played well. When you go 10-0-5, you look pretty good no matter what. And it's hard to argue against that. I think there's a lot to be said about where the setup's coming from. 10 assists on both Cubo, Nika, and then 9 there picked up for Neil. 7 a little bit further behind there for Vote. But most of the kills going on to the 21K Chernobog.
Do want to give some credit over the Tartarus Titans, though. I would argue they had phenomenal macro play throughout the early portions of that match. I mean, what was that, like a 4-0 start for the Oni Warriors? I look at the top of the screen, 400 gold up. I'm like,
close.
Okay, the Titans keep it a little bit interesting, but as you said, it doesn't really matter what the gold difference is if you're just winning every team fight regardless.
Especially, mainly late game, right? Early game, the gold difference matters a ton because, hey, they're dead for 10 seconds. Who cares? Late game, oh, they're dead for a whole minute, and that's something that they had to contend with. And unfortunately, the Titans didn't contend with that one very well. The fight's not going their way, and the Warriors end up finding themselves the 3-1 dub. And it makes things fun because, Mifflin, after this, you know, there's a lot of conversations to be had in mid for the Warriors, a lot of changes. The Morrigan in game 1, but then to the Discordia, to the Hera, to the Chernobog, 4 different gods in 4 different games. And so, of course, we got to talk to the person who goes 10-0-5 in that last game and plays all of those different gods. We've got Dardes standing around and just waiting for the interview. And I guess the first question, rip the Band-Aid off. What went wrong in game 3? Was it the Hera or was it something higher?
That was definitely team diff. Like, I was actually 1-5 the game. Like, I don't know. My team just trolled. Like, help me, please.
So they just wanted it to be a longer set. They were like, oh man, like we can't just end this in 3. We got to make it spicy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Yeah.
They're playing for the entertainment seed. You go for the Morrigan, you know, in game 1, ends up getting banned out in game 2. You switch over to the Discordia, and that worked out really well for you guys. What was the mentality behind that pick?
Well, I just needed like a good god against E-set in mid that can apply Divine really well. So I went for Discordia. Like, Discordia is always good against Fenner. Like, I'm safe. So I just needed like a safeguard, and we would have won the game.
Oh, and you ended up winning that one, so it feels
Yeah.
pretty good. You guys are third seed coming out of this tournament now. This is going to be the last time we see you until the second week of Masters, so it's going to be a while, like 3 weeks
Gonna miss
until
you.
we see you there.
You
I
too.
guess, like, what's the team's approach to this? I know like when week 1 comes through, you'll probably be watching the games and there's going to be scrims, but is there anything else that you're going to be doing for preparation?
Well, I feel like we've played very poorly this weekend, so we need to fix so many issues. Like, I don't know what happened this weekend, because the past 2 weeks we played very well.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened yesterday or today. Even today, game 1 was awful, honestly. Even last game was really like, like Nika was like I don't know. We played very bad. Like we played
Call
very
him
bad.
out. What do you want to say
No,
about Nika?
no, I'm not saying. No. I did not say Nika played bad. I just said we played bad around him. We played better like overall, honestly.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I'm actually happy. We have 3 weeks of like scrims before
Yeah.
the Masters. We have a lot of things to.
A lot of
fix.
VOD review that's about to come back
Yeah,
for you
for
guys.
sure,
Just
for
watching
sure.
back the footage and seeing what you can do. Well, hey, you still get the win today,
Yep.
and so hopefully by the next time we see you, you'll feel a lot better about the play that you're bringing to the field. But thanks for your time, man, and congratulations on your win.
Thank you.
No problem. Always fun to get that insight. Always interesting, Mifflin, to me, to hear the like the you get the win and then you come out and you're like, I don't know, man. Like I don't think any of that was that great.
I will say that is one of the worst feelings on the planet. I attend like FGC locals sometimes, and
okay.
I get beat up because I'm not very good.
Yeah.
And then the guy will like shake my hand. He says, "Man, I played so bad." And I'm like, "I lost." Like, don't say that to me.
We'll do that here, right? Like we'll do a set and like someone will end the cast and be like, "Man, that was a great cast." And you'll go, "Really? I was awful." And the other person goes, "Oh, maybe I was better too." Like, it becomes a deep
tough.
thinker. And so yeah, definitely feels I think all the way, and it goes down to the core there for the Warriors. It'll be fun to see them though. It's going to be a while before we get to see them play again. A nice little break for everybody involved. Not yet for the break though. It's going to be the Dragons, #1 coming into this. And the Bolts, #2, I believe, coming into today's tournament. Playing up against each other, a matchup that has just coincided with history of Smite, as it seems, over the last few years. These teams are almost destined to meet, and it's almost always going to happen, at minimum, in the Phase 1 finals. Unfortunately for the Bolts, it's not gone their way each time, but we'll see how that ends up shaking out. Mifflin, this is going to be, I think, a fun one. I know you're going to be casting this one, but what are your thoughts on the next set?
I think it's going to be a long set. It's something that both interviewees yesterday brought up was, hey, we have got competitive history between the Bolts and the Dragons.
There's
so
bad blood here.
I'm expecting it to go long, but individually short games, I believe.
Yeah, they were hanging out a lot. It's always the weird thing. Put them in the booths against each other. These two teams will absolutely like just at each other's throats, whatever. The minute they're hanging out outside of the game, very relaxed. All of them were just sitting in the break room. I told you I was sitting in there watching the games with Barra, talking to Sam a little bit and Mike for a little bit there. So it was very fun to see how that shakes out. But that is going to be after this break. So we're going to kick it to a small, short, brief intermission. And then when we come back, we've got the Dragons taking on the Bolts right after this.